Ladies and gentlemen, please make your way over to the stage area and take your seat. The program will begin in 5 minutes.
I've been looking at the stars tonight, and I think, oh, how I miss that bright sun. I'll be a dreamer till the day I die, but they say, oh, how the good die young. But we're all strange, and maybe we don't want to change. I got guns in my head and they won't go. Spirits in my head and they won't go. I got guns in my head and they won't go. Spirits in my head and they won't go. When the gun still rattles, the gun still rattles. Oh, I got guns in my head and they won't go. Spirits in my head and they won't go. I spent a lot of nights on the run, and I think, oh, like I'm lost and can't be found. I'm just waiting for my day to come, and I think, oh, I don't wanna let you down, 'cause something inside has changed, and maybe we don't wanna stay the same. I got guns in my head and they won't go. Spirits in my head and they won't go. I got guns in my head and they won't go. Spirits in my head and they won't go. But the gun still rattles, the gun still rattles. Oh, but the gun still rattles, the gun still rattles. Oh, and I don't want a never-ending life. I just wanna be alive while I'm here. And I don't want a never-ending life. I just wanna be alive while I'm here. And I don't want to see another night lost inside a lonely life while I'm here. I got guns in my head and they won't go. Spirits in my head and they won't go. I got guns in my head and they won't go. Spirits in my head and they won't go. But the gun still rattles, the gun still rattles. Oh, but the gun still rattles, the gun still rattles. Oh.
She don't got no manners, ain't got no class. She won't take no 9 to 5, so just take all your cash. And when she starts walking, it's like popcorn popping. And we're all here watching, waiting for her to pass. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. If it's working, some just kick it.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage 11 Alive sports anchor Maria Martin.
Hey everybody, how's it going? Okay, we need some more energy than that. I'm not good with no energy. How's it going? Beautiful. Well, thank you guys for being here today. I know that there is a lot planned. We have been working so hard to get you guys the best information humanly possible over the next couple of hours. You are in for a treat because there are some tremendous panelists, and I'm so happy to be here. This is actually my third straight year doing this event, so I feel like a seasoned veteran when it comes to LakePoint, and I just love everything that they are doing here. Just to tell you a little bit about myself really quickly, if you don't know me and we haven't met yet, I am Maria Martin. I'm the lead sports anchor at 11 Alive, the NBC affiliate here in Atlanta. It's been a crazy ride here in Atlanta for me. I got here 5 years ago. I was a one-man band hired to be an MMJ, for those of you media people out there, and really a producer. And that had turned into 5 years later, I'm now the main sports anchor. And it's been a wild journey covering all of our amazing teams here. You'll see a Georgia Tech alum on stage in just a little bit. And I covered Georgia, Georgia State, I mean, you name it, high school, Falcons, Braves, the Dream, everybody. So it's been a wild ride, and the Braves have slowed down my October a little bit, which is good for me, bad for baseball fans. But I'd love to chat with you guys afterwards, and like I said, we have a lot planned, and before we get into all of that, the man of the hour, really, I mean, he is in charge of so many things here at LakePoint. All of you guys know exactly who Mark O'Brien is. He is going to lead us off today. So I want to welcome to the stage the one, the only, President and CEO of LakePoint Sports, Mark O'Brien. I told you I would give you that.
So silly. So silly. Thank you, Maria.
Mark and I have become friends over the last couple of years. We've been doing this. It feels like we're here again every year, and it's getting bigger and better, this event, every single time. But before I get into that, I do want to thank some of our partners out there who, please go visit them. They are standing over there. Be Visuals, All-Star Outfitters, Cordell, and Play Pits for Us by Mom. Tons of wonderful people here today. And you are at the forefront of all of this, Mark. Let's have a seat, and let's talk about not only some of the things that you're seeing in the industry right now, some of the trends, but it all comes back to LakePoint here, the premier destination for travel and youth sports, right?
Well, thank you. Yeah, and welcome to everybody. So grateful for the attendance and everyone that's come out to LakePoint Sports to be with us, and to Greg Barkoff and the entire LakePoint Sports team for the effort that they put to bring this whole event together. And Maria, it's always great to have you here. To lead the charge and help us rally the team and to stay on message and on time. So thank you.
I will be doing that, don't worry.
Thank you. So as we look at, really the state of the industry, and what's really exciting is just, and I'll go ahead and jump right in,
Sure.
is just really the growth that we're seeing across the industry. There's a lot of headlines that we'll talk about today. There are some disruptors. There are some things in the industry that I think as an industry, we need to really bring to the forefront and have a discussion as leaders in the industry on how we're going to address some of the disruptors. And then how do we continue the momentum across youth sports, travel and youth sports that we see across the board. And it's an industry that's incredibly exciting, very dynamic. And the size of the industry is really interesting because if you look on the screen here, you just see the size. I mean, the NFL, the juggernaut of all professional sports leagues, and you see the size of the travel and youth sports industry at $37.5 billion. We have some sports ETA data that has it north of $50 billion that'll be coming up here in a moment. But it's not only where we reside today as an industry, travel and youth sports, relative to the major leagues, whether it's the NFL, MLB, NBA, or NHL, and there's others out there, as you'd noted. But we're just, you see the numbers and it's just like, how is that possible? And then you see the category annual growth rate. And you look at the numbers where the industry is going to go over the next 5 years from a financial perspective. And, it's really mind-numbing to see the financial engine that's behind this industry. And that's good. There's a lot of exciting things about that when you look at what's driving the industry. But there's also, I think, some of the headwinds that we need to discuss as we look at the financial model of travel and youth sports. The other thing I really, the team that helped put the slides together at Sports ETA, and I'm sorry John David couldn't be with us here today. I'll give him a hard time every chance I get that he wasn't able to make it, but he was kind enough, and his team, Michelle and team over there, were kind enough to supply us some really interesting data. We also have some data from the Aspen Institute, which I know Tom's going to talk about later. But you look at, as their data tells you from a tourism perspective, it's over a $50 billion industry. And that includes transportation and lodging and F&B as a whole, retail, and of course, tournament operations and what have you. So we're kind of in the middle of it all at LakePoint. And we certainly, from a tourism perspective, continue to drive an economic impact north of $100 million across the state of Georgia, which is really exciting. But our state overall, in terms of tourism, continues to compete at a national level, and we continue to see more sports tourism come to our state, which is critical for our economic engine in the state of Georgia. And we know that tourism is the #2 industry in the state of Georgia behind agriculture. So it's really interesting, and sports is part of that. It's not solely driving the entire tourism industry, but we're excited to see that in the state of Georgia, and certainly at a national level.
One thing that I think is really important to mention, you're talking about sports is here in Georgia, and it's such a big talking point. Look at all of the massive events that are coming here to Georgia and people that are interested in that when it comes to sports. How do you feel like that plays into the youth sports space? It's funny because whenever I talk to coaches and athletes, they know what LakePoint is because you guys are at the forefront of all of that. But beyond that, there is so much that goes into travel and youth sports. What do you see as one of the current trends with that?
Yeah, and I think, one of the, and we'll get into some of the trends on the tourism side, but also some of the headwinds and some of the disruptors that we see in the space. And I think as we continue to see participation improve on some of the macro metrics coming out of COVID, I think there's still opportunity to get more kids to play sports at a national level. And we see a lot more specialization than we ever have, and that's, I think, falls into the disruptor category. But we are seeing strong demand as we look at the travel and youth sports industry, particularly at LakePoint. We've got incredible demand across the campus, across our 8 core sports. But you're seeing the trends, and we'll get into that shortly on a few slides here, around some of the participation numbers that our friends at SFIA were able to provide. As we look at overall tourism, just the growth that you're seeing in the number of travelers attending sporting events in the U.S., it's now surpassed 2019 levels into 22 and continued to grow in 23. And the impact that has financially on a tourism perspective. So I'm bringing it back to tourism and the economic impact, which is particularly critical coming out of COVID. And as we live in the inflationary times that we live in, how is the economics driving the business, and then how do we address the costs associated with it, which is one of the challenges we have in the industry, particularly under the inflationary conditions we're all navigating as businesses and as individuals. So, and for us, it really is about creating that impact the best we can to help drive the economy across the country, certainly in Georgia, certainly in Bartow County and the 9 counties as part of LakePoint Local. But we really look at LakePoint as the national destination, premier destination for travel and youth sports. And so as you look at the national map here, you'll see Georgia ranks 9th, which is great for Georgia, great for the state of Georgia. And we actually held, from a tourism perspective, we're 5th in the country, and we've held that a few years in a row. Governor Kemp just announced that at the governor's conference just a few weeks ago here in Atlanta. And I think what this speaks to is that sports tourism really isn't going anywhere. It's a big part of the economics at the state level. And as the premier travel and youth sports destination, we play a critical role in our state's tourism, but also, as you noted, a destination for kids from all over the country, all over the world. And we're very fortunate to have the athletes, the coaches, the families, and the scouts on our campus year round, nearly 365 a year. So it's pretty exciting. And the space we sit in, if you look at the ecosystem of the travel and youth sports industry, it's really comprised, if you break it into 4 quadrants, really you have the club, the league, and the tournament operators. You have the technology and media providers, and we're super excited. I think Will McIntosh with NBC Sports Next will talk about our partnership, but also what they're doing from an innovation standpoint across the travel and youth sports ecosystem. We're excited to partner with them, and we'll share more about that later today. But also you have, academies and camps, and certainly IMG. Everyone is, tip of the cap to IMG and what they've built and accomplished as the premier academy. But there's others out there that are in that academy camp space. And then you have the venues or facilities across the country. And that often is a private-public partnership with local municipalities, communities, counties, even at the state level. And you've seen this trend over the last 5-10 years of venues being built and utilized similar to LakePoint, or attempt to be similar to LakePoint. I didn't have anything to do with what was constructed at LakePoint, but I can tip my cap to the team that did, and they really did a phenomenal job in building and constructing some of the best, if not the best, venues in the country. So this kind of gives us a framework for the ecosystem. And then I think what's really important is we talk about participation. And while the trend line appears to be improving in terms of overall sports participation, like any data, you really need to peel it back. And you need to understand where the participation, what levels, what age groups is actually taking place. And while this number looks like a very positive trajectory, we know there's challenges in our country around sports participation, health and wellness, and we'll talk about that in a moment. But we're seeing overall increased participation. And here at LakePoint, you asked about LakePoint, our sports participation across our 8 core sports continues to see significant growth across baseball and basketball. Volleyball the indoor volleyball continues to see exponential growth overall. And so we look at the national data, but we also, how does that impact us here at LakePoint so that we can provide that national audience with the best experience when they come to LakePoint?
What are you noticing when it comes to that increased participation? What are the things that are the driving force behind getting those kids to get more involved?
Well, I think, not to make it sound like a negative, but I actually think it's a combination of the challenges we're seeing in K through 12 funding, as well as our recreations, our local recreations. And this is a national topic where you're not seeing the funding and participation K through 12 for sports. You're not seeing the funding in our local rec departments like maybe 10, 15, 20 years ago, where the system was actually the rec leagues, and you'd come through the rec leagues. The shift, because of that void without the funding, and what the funding provides is quality fields, quality coaches, quality experience for the athletes, for the coaches, for the families. Something that I grew up with and was the feeder system where I grew up, allowing me to then play high school and then play low-level Division 27 college baseball. But it was really, that path is very limited nowadays. It's really, the void has been filled by travel sports. And really that's part of the topics that we have to talk about as an industry on what's happening K through 12, as well as in our rec leagues. And it's not one or the other. It needs to be a full ecosystem, and how we all work together for the betterment of sports participation, health and wellness, and just improving our communities overall, which sounds maybe a little esoteric and a little feel-goodish, but I think that's really at the heart of the challenges we have as an industry.
And then one thing you mentioned when it comes to the industry is specialization. It's something that we will talk about at length today on probably every single panel. What are some of the things that you're noticing about specialization, particularly when it comes to kids a lot younger starting out?
Yeah, I think there's just more pressure out there, for kids as they look at, committing to a program, as early as 8, 9, 10, 11 years old, or committing to a sport. and essentially committing to a program because of that void in their local market. So specialization, you almost feel this, there's almost this anxiety that if I don't specialize, I'm going to be left behind and I won't be able to compete at baseball, at basketball, at football, at volleyball, whatever the sport may be. And so there's this shift of getting involved and committing to one sport only a lot sooner than maybe historically had been the case. And I personally, this is just my personal opinion, I'm not a proponent for that. I think there's a lot of benefit to playing multiple sports, not only from a diversity of sport experience, but giving your body a rest from one sport to another because you're using different muscles, there's different techniques, and what have you. So I'm a big fan of kids, particularly through the grade school, middle school, maybe even early high school years. By the time you're 14, 15, I think then you can start making a decision, do I commit to one or two sports? But I think that specialization at such an early age is not, in my opinion, the best thing for kids.
And then lastly, we're going to wrap things up, bringing it back to LakePoint. Tell me some of the things that you're excited about. You went through all of the metrics and data that you guys use to help LakePoint grow. What are you excited about when it comes to the future and the present for LakePoint?
Yeah, for LakePoint, I mean, I just think you see all the growth and momentum, all the construction. You got a new hotel opening up next month. You've got the Curve Test Center, the first one, working with the team at the Curve Test Center to launch that concept. So we'll talk about that later today, and just very excited about the continued growth and momentum that we're seeing, but also our ability to really focus in on the guest experience and really try to deliver excellence in the guest experience for our team members, our guests on campus, the coaches, the athletes, the scouts, and most importantly, the family members.
Well, Mark, thank you. Thank you for everything that you do and everything that you have planned today. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
Everybody, Mark O'Brien.
Thank you.
Thank you. Great job. So Mark gave us a lot of really good things to think about when it comes to the state of the travel and youth sports industry, and you'll see a lot of those talking points that he just made really come up throughout the duration of our panels today. There are a lot of people who will hit back on each one of those things, particularly all the data, the good data that you saw. I saw some people taking pictures. That's great, because we're going to go back and reference that a little bit later on. But up next, we have the youth sports journey, player to parent and beyond. This is a very special guest. You will soon see his jersey in the rafters at Georgia Tech. Please help me by welcoming the great, the one and only Dennis Scott. A sharp-dressed man in the house.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're so welcome. For those of you that don't know Dennis, I don't know how, but he played professional basketball for a long time, did tremendous things at Georgia Tech. Like I mentioned, he's going to have his jersey retired November 15th, right?
Yes, ma'am.
The Georgia game, which I'm sure you love.
Sorry, Bulldogs.
He spent 7 years with the Orlando Magic. He's a former McDonald's All-American, and now he has two lovely children playing basketball. Your son plays basketball at Georgia State.
That's right.
And your daughter plays volleyball.
And volleyball at Mount Vernon School in Sandy Springs.
So you've got a lot going on.
Yes.
And the good thing that you can talk about specifically is the fact that not only did you play at a collegiate level, but you played professionally. And that can go back to what it's like to now bringing up two kids who are very competitive with sports. How do you take those lessons that you learned personally, collegiately, professionally, and even when you were a kid, and bring that back to being a parent now, coaching those two?
Well, I think the biggest thing is I try to tell them hard work always prevails. So in today's era, these kids want to get these offers, and I've talked to this coach. We had a great conversation. They're offering me a scholarship. Well, back in our day, you had a letter of intent in front of you, and you've accepted it, signed it, moved on, or you waited, and sometimes you would come back, that letter of intent would be gone. So I have a phrase at my house where the work doesn't lie, people do. How do you get better from your freshman year, your sophomore year, your junior year to your senior year, and finally you're ready to take that leap of faith from the hard work and go into college? And that's one of the things I try to make sure I instill in all of my kids, for that matter.
I'm curious, Is it hard for you to separate dad and coach in these moments with both your daughter and your son?
Yes, at times, but no, because I've lived it.
Yeah.
So to be able to show your son or your daughter that Naismith National Player of the Year trophy on your mantle in your office, I earned that. No one gave it to me. It wasn't a reporter wrote some article and ranked me #2 in the state. Then I went around town and said I'm excited. So that's another thing that our kids are going through now is all these rankings. So back then, you had to earn everything that was given. So that's the fun part for me is to be able to show them that. So when they're working hard, they're getting better. We as parents, you're super excited because you know you've driven them to practice. You've driven them to lift weights, the training, get up extra shots, volleyball practice, whatever it may be, you know you've taken them there to get better. Now you're happy.
You and I were having a conversation before this just about your playing days at Georgia Tech and how you kind of turned the page whenever you decided to hone in and focus on your craft. What's the biggest thing that you learned when you were playing that maybe some of these younger student athletes can take from?
That there are tons of kids that have the same dream you have. How hard are you working to attain that dream? What work are you putting in? What sacrifices are you willing to do? And I think that was some of the things for me that people who know my story, I had to eat better. I had to take care of my body. Once I did that, all the good things came to fruition.
A lot has changed since you were playing, and it feels like every time we turn around, things are changing, and people are having to adapt to that change. One of which I know you can talk about for a very long time, and everybody in here knows probably what I'm about to say, NIL. It is changing the landscape of how we operate, not only at the collegiate level, but both at the high school level as well. Give me your #1 opinion on how NIL is headed, how it's going, and what do you think the future holds for NIL?
Well, it's definitely the wild, wild west now.
For sure.
With NIL. And I think for parents who come and ask me how did I handle it, well, it's called name, image, and likeness. Does your daughter, does your son have a great name? Do they have a great image? Do they have a great likeness? What do we mean, people? So if I go back to 1990, we went to the Final Four. I know there were a lot of #4 jersey with Scott sold. I got $0 for it. I know there was a lot of #12 Kenny Anderson jerseys sold. We got $0. Same thing with Brian Oliver wearing #13. So I think that's where Pandora's box got opened up, where if a kid or for young ladies playing volleyball, softball, and their jerseys are being sold, that's their name, that's their mom and dad's name. They should deserve it. Now on the flip side of it, today, Syracuse, Georgia Tech, UCLA, and Maryland, they're all recruiting me. They all have $1 million on the table. This is today's climate. Where do I go to school? I'm still picking Georgia Tech. UCLA is too far away home from Washington, D.C. Getting $1 million, I'm probably getting $450 because the taxes in California. Right?
Right.
Go to Syracuse, 37 inches of snow. Mom, no daggone way we come to this snow. There's no way. Maryland, you stay close to home. Lynn Baise that passed away. There's a whole lot of rules going on. I don't know if I want that. So I come down here to Atlanta, Southern hospitality, sweet tea, Georgia peach. I was like, Mom, I think I want to come down south. So if you put that in today's time and everyone's offering the same so-called NIL money, I'm still picking Georgia Tech for all the right reasons.
Now we're seeing NIL, I kind of mentioned it, but we're starting to see it trickle down to the high school level, especially here in the state of Georgia. What are some of the challenges that you think that presents?
Well, making sure our kids are picking the school for the right reason. And I was telling a parent the other day, I said, if your son goes to 4 different schools and does well, who retires his jersey? Where is his family? When it's time to go in business after basketball, football, baseball, whatever it may be, where's that first phone call? And I think that sometimes gets a little muddy that, yes, the opportunity's there for NIL, but make sure you're still picking the right school for you, because Why pick a school, then you're there for 6 months and one little thing goes wrong, and you call home, Mom, Dad, I want to transfer. For what? Well, the coach said he was going to do this. Well, I'm not playing that many minutes. I hang up the phone. I said, because I couldn't call my mom and dad and say, hey, I'm way down here in Atlanta, and Coach Crimmins is not playing me well. I got to keep working. So that's why we as parents got to make sure our children pick the right school that fits them so they can play. Because I don't know if your son or daughter can play sitting on the bench shaking a pom-pom.
You're kind of saying this, but it is probably more important now than ever for parents to guide, parents or whoever, to guide kids in the right direction. How critical is that in this moment when NIL is becoming at the forefront of many student athletes' conversations?
Make sure you do your homework. Find the right school for your son or daughter. Find the right youth program for your son or daughter. I went through it in real time, and his dad now loves me because I told him the truth. I said, your son's not that good. He looked at me like I was crazy. By the end of the 3 years, I said, I'm going to give you a choice. You can play on the circuit team, but you're only going to play about 10 minutes a game. But if you stay local, you're going to play about 25, 28 minutes a game, and now I'll be able to showcase your son. First 2 years, he didn't listen. Going to a senior, he listened. Now he has a scholarship going to college. Now the dad calls me every day. I said, no, I'm good. I'm just glad you listened because now your son's happy. And that's the key because his son played, and now the school saw him. I want this kid. I want him on my campus. And now everything works out. So I think that's the biggest message for mom and dads, anyone listening. Make sure you do your homework and make sure your child has a chance to play. They have to play because otherwise how does that college coach know he or she can play?
Yeah, that's a good point. And Mark talked about this a little bit when it comes to specialization for young athletes. Do you feel like we've seen the end of the 3-sport athlete?
I think for the parents who are not afraid of the unknown, because I to this day, football is still my favorite sport, but obviously basketball pays the bills.
Yeah.
Right? So on Sundays, everyone knows I'm watching Cowboys all day long since I've been a knee-high kid because I couldn't take the Deadskins. If there are any Deadskin fans out there, I'm sorry. So it's like,
Hey, the Falcons are exciting right now.
of course, I love my local team, but being able to navigate, I guess is the best word to use.
Yeah.
We as parents, sometimes it's hard to get out the way because you got to pick the right high school, you pick the right trainer. If it's volleyball, you find the right volleyball coach. Find those coaches, find those schools, and then go have a seat. It was hard for me to go have a seat, but I knew there were certain things I knew very well, and I knew there were certain things I didn't know. So I had to go out there and find the right trainer for my kids. So now I drive, drop them off, sit out there in the car like everyone else, and watch a movie or something on my iPad until they come out of training.
That's got to be so hard for you to do, isn't it?
It's tough. It's tough. But if I can be honest to mom and dad, I have to look myself in the mirror and be honest to myself.
And that goes back to what you were talking about in finding the right coaches. You have the trust in the people that have the hands on the kids that are teaching them so you can sit in the car and watch things on your iPad.
You and I were speaking about it earlier, and Lenny Daniels, good friend, our kids go to the same school. So the previous coach, who was at Mount Vernon, who's now down in Orlando, trust me, mom and dad, there were plenty games. Why the hell is my son not in the game? He only has 2 fouls. Why is he still sitting there? They're not calling enough plays for him. He's only taking 5 shots tonight. He's only taking 3 threes. I'm going to say something to the coach. No, you're not. Set your butt down and sit down and be a mom and dad. So as an ex-player, I
you got an applause for that.
I still have to bite my tongue, set my butt down, and go home.
It's a lesson that you had to learn, and I'm sure many parents in the audience had to learn as well. You and I were talking about whether or not there's an it factor for these young student athletes. There are so many intangibles that you need in anything in life to be successful in what you do. But what are some of those things that you feel like, as a young student athlete, or not even a student athlete yet, you need in order to take sports to the next level?
When your son or daughter wakes you up to go work out.
Did that happen to you?
That's the beginning of the it factor. Yes.
Oh, good.
Both of my kids. When they were in middle school, I'd say, let's go work out. No, I want to go swimming. I want to go play with little Johnny across the street. Okay, bye. Because when you force your child to want to be great, it's not going to happen. I say it again. When you try to force your child to be great, it will not happen. What do you mean? Well, the day my son Trey woke up and said, Mom, take me to the gym at 6 in the morning. I want to work out before school. Dad, after practice, I want to go get extra shots up after practice. That's what great players do. For anyone in this building that knows a great player, that's the mindset of the steps of they're doing on their own. Now, if they're talented, along with that hard work, then you're going to be watching them on Saturdays and Sundays.
I want to talk about your daughter for a second. We saw some of those numbers with volleyball, and she is a high school athlete playing volleyball. That sport has skyrocketed
Yes, it has.
within the last couple of years, and shout out to Georgia Tech. They look good so far this
They
season.
look real good.
I know you're excited about that, but what have you noticed when it comes to volleyball in particular with these young ladies?
That they're super athletic, that they don't get credit for. I think the biggest thing for me is I'm glad they changed the rules. So back when you go to games in the 80s and 90s, you had to serve to get a score, and the games took forever. I think that's why a lot of us casual fans left. But now the scoring has changed. It's more exciting, and the girls are intense, and they're look like you get a kill, and a girl looks another girl through. I'm like, ooh, she really just gritted on her like that. I like this. That's showing their personalities and now helping to sell them as young women out there to the world. So now, when I put on my daughter's volleyball jersey, well, it's a little snug, but I had to get a large one. I look forward to it now.
Yeah.
They're like, wait a minute, yep, that's your personality. You're the first dad to have on a daughter volleyball jersey, but I wear it in pride.
And there's so many opportunities for young ladies with volleyball now. I mean, they can aspire to go to the Olympics. They can play professionally. We have a couple of professional leagues here in Atlanta. What would you say to some of those young ladies who have some of those dreams and goals?
Well, for my daughter, she woke up and said, Mom, Dad, so you actually mean someone's going to pay for my education and I can get a free education, and Dad, I don't have to get in your pocket anymore? I said, please, darling, please take volleyball serious so you can get out of my pocket. That was the revelation for her to want to take the game more serious. And then having fun. Some of you people know that she was in Hilton Head this past weekend in the volleyball tournament. So some of those numbers Mark was showing, I know I was part of the hotel, I was part of the rental car, I was part of the food, I was part of all the extra stuff. So all those numbers are real.
You contributed to those
Yes.
numbers for sure, and
Yes.
you will do a lot more of that in the future, I'm sure. Speaking of that, travel sports, navigating that as a parent, how do you do that? What does it come down to?
Same thing I said earlier, people. You got to be honest with your child. It's all about playing. I know people want to say, oh, yeah, I played with this EYBL team. Yes, I played with 3SSB, or I played on this Under Armour. So how many good kids are there? If there's 3 major travel circuits, and then you have now Made Hoops, it's probably the #1 independent circuit. So that's 4. Are that really that many elite kids out there? Who's heard the phrase late bloomer? I know I can't see hands, but just kind of raise your hand so your neighbor can see. There's more late bloomers than there are kids who are so-called the #1 sophomore in the country, the #1 junior in the country. He's the #1 senior. Then you go to draft night 2 years ago, like, where the hell is that kid I thought was the #1? It really doesn't mean anything until the time comes, your senior year, junior year, whatever it may be, that you're going into a draft or a college to come recruit your son.
So why are travel sports important?
If you pick the right travel organization, it's for exposure. Now, the story I said earlier, you can also get exposed, meaning that your son or daughter really can't play. And once that happens, you've kind of crushed your kid because they're traveling and you're sitting on the bench. And if you're mom or dad, now I'll say this very sincerely, if you're happy spending all your money and your son or daughter is happy sitting on the bench, travel. Not high school, because high school's high school. That's different. Why are you spending extra money to travel to sit still? You're traveling to get exposure. I walk into a tournament, what do parents first thing they do? They look over there to see how many college coaches are sitting over there, right? I don't have a problem with that. Is your son or daughter playing? Then why are we here? Just to spend the money? Because we know LakePoint and other facilities around the world, they're going to take your money. They're going to take it gladly because you're here. So make sure you've done your due diligence and find the right travel program so your son or daughter can play. Play, I say it again, play.
Going back to how much things have changed ever since you played, what's one of the biggest things that you look at now, especially because you're living it as a dad with 2 kids who play sports, where you say, gosh, I wish I would have had that when I was younger?
I wish my dad could have been around more, because the biggest thing I think I saved my son Trey from is being a hired gun. It hurts my heart to watch a kid play a game at 10 o'clock a.m. on court 1. His team lost. Then at 1 o'clock, he has another jersey on. He's playing for that team. And mom and dad allowed it. Then lost again. Then he's playing on the championship game later on that night on a 3rd team in one day. And they allowed it to happen. I wish my dad would have been around so I didn't go through it, because I was a hired gun. It drives me crazy. So by the time Trey became a senior, hey, you think, you lost, you think your dad let me? You must don't know who my dad is.
Okay, I want to wrap up with something a little personal. We've been talking about your jersey getting put up in the rafters there November 15th against Georgia. You excited about that? I know that's going to bring back a ton of memories. What's the feeling around that?
Ooh, you say the best for last. 3 years ago, my mom was in the nursing home, and she's watching television. And I don't know what she was watching, and she called me and said, baby, she said, how come number 4 is not in the rafters? I said, Mom, I haven't graduated yet. She said, what you waiting on, baby? I said, Mom, good. She said, well, for my 81st birthday, I would like for you to graduate. So I just turned 56. She just turned 82. I graduated last December. She's the reason why my jersey is being retired. I've gotten a question every year since 1990 from our Final Four run. Tara August is here today. When I went to her 3 years ago, I said, Tara, can you tweak my schedule for the next 2.5 years? I'm going back to school Fridays and Saturday nights, and I'm also getting my master's. So I also got my master's as well.
That's awesome.
You got me good on that one.
You're welcome. Ladies and gentlemen, the wonderful Dennis Scott. Congratulations. It's so awesome. So great. I know a lot of you guys can identify with being a parent of a young student athlete or an aspiring student athlete, and hopefully someday some of your kids out there will be playing professional sports. Obviously, Dennis knows that well, and we're so excited to see that jersey finally retired. Really excited and so happy about everything that he has going on. Coming up next, we have a really great panel. We're going to bring a couple more chairs over here because we have 3 lovely guests this time. We're going to beef it up a little bit for you guys. We have the influences fueling the momentum around travel and youth sports. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage Wade Martin, Greg Kristof, and Ryan Baise.
This is how legends are made.
Hey. Great to see you. Great to see you.
This is
Great to
how
see you.
legends are made.
All right. You guys having fun yet? Yeah. Okay, great. We're so glad that you guys are here. Don't worry, the mic's on. We're good. Okay, so this is going to be a really exciting panel because these are 3 men that know a lot about this, the influences fueling the momentum around travel and youth sports, and they have a lot to talk about. And Wade, I know you're new in your role, so
I'm glad you considered me one of the 3 men who I knew a lot what was going on in the industry.
Yeah, but
Still very much figuring it out.
you do. You have a very robust background as well, but you're new in this Unrivaled Sports role. So tell us a little bit about what Unrivaled Sports is and what you guys are trying to accomplish.
Yeah, well, Unrivaled's about 9 months old in name, but about 3 years old in sort of practical reality. It started with the acquisition of Cooperstown All-Star Village. That led to bringing on the Ripken baseball team as partners, and we've made a number of acquisitions since, mostly in the youth travel experience space and facilities. And so really marrying the idea of owned and operated complexes with owned premium content that we put into those complexes.
Which speaks to the language of a lot of people here, so they know exactly what you're talking about. We'll get into that in just a second. Greg, you used to work at 3-Step, and you have a very robust background as well. So tell us a little bit about your background and experience in the travel and youth sports industry. We'll start there.
Yeah, sure. So started Zero Gravity Basketball back in 2010. Helped grow it from 4 events to 224 in 16 different states. Became the largest privately owned youth basketball company in the country. Sold to 3-Step in 2019, and then helped grow that business from, a smaller kind of mom-pa group up to a multi-$100 million revenue business. Unbelievable ride. Saw a lot. Worked with CVBs, major sports complexes, sponsors, and was part of helping the acquisitions. And during that time, went from 4 brands to over 100 youth sports brands in 5 years. So it was a wild ride, to say the least.
Not that you can encapsulate all of that in just one sentence, but how did you grow it that quickly?
A lot of it just through relationships, the idea of what was going on. There was a movement, there was excitement around it, and there was a need, and I'm sure it's something that'll get talked about, was consolidating the space. And being the first mover in that, there was a lot of excitement around it, and a lot of entrepreneurs in the youth sports space that wanted to be part of something bigger. And we'd been an option, and 3-Step continues to be an option there.
And Ryan, over there in the far chair, did you tell Dennis that you used to play football?
Yeah, we didn't get to that topic.
Okay.
We might later.
Look, he said football is his favorite sport, so you might want to drop that in wherever he's sitting right now. But Ryan, you're the CEO and co-founder of You Think. You have a partner in Greg Olson, who, if those of you that don't know him, he is the 3-time Pro Bowler, and now he's a commentator doing his thing. Tell me about You Think, the inception of it, and your mission.
So You Think started as a podcast and really a mission-driven organization that Greg formed in 2022 after he retired from the NFL, a 14-year career. And he stepped into, what he says his full-time job is coaching his 3 kids across a litany of travel baseball and club volleyball and travel softball and football. And, while he knows a lot about football, he didn't know a whole lot about those other sports. And what he didn't have an appreciation for is how much the youth sports ecosystem had changed in the 20-plus years since he was a youth athlete. And as someone who's the son of a legendary high school football coach in New Jersey, sports had literally been his entire life. And so as he stepped into this unknown territory, he was blown away by, all the complexity of it. And he started calling up his network of moms and dads, not just any moms and dads, but people like Cooper Manning and Lisa McCaffrey and world-renowned sport and performance psychologists and trainers, and started having these off-the-record phone calls with these people about the best practices and how should I approach this situation or that situation. And so he finally said, okay, if I'm having these questions as someone who's spent my entire life in sports, I guarantee there's millions of other families that are having, the same issues. And so that turned into 44 episodes that were conversations of that type with these people. And at the time, I was working for Fanatics. I'd spent most of the last decade there, and we were really thinking long and hard about a potential entry into the youth sports commerce space to try to solve some of the challenges and customer experience issues that we see there. Very long story short, Fanatics took a pass. I'd been friends with Greg's agent for a long time, and so we decided to come together and build, what's a combination of a media business and a commerce operation.
It's really awesome, and I think Greg was onto something there. He was a part of, obviously, the NFL, and you heard us talking about how big the NFL is, but the youth sports space, believe it or not, excuse me, is even bigger than the NFL, which is hard to conceptualize, but we're seeing it in real time. Wade, coming back to you, let's talk about the longer term vision for Unrivaled Sports. You told us a little about what it is, but what does it look like when it comes to the vision for the youth and sports travel with Unrivaled Sports?
Yeah, well, I think what we believe that we do well and hopefully continue to improve on is providing great experiences at our complexes. And one of the things we think is important about what we do is by running the complex and owning the programming and running the tournaments or the events or showcases, we think we can provide a really great experience sort of end to end, from the food and beverage to the inside the lines action that's happening on the field. And so we want to continue to expand that, both expand our footprint geographically, but also expand the programming offerings that we have. And that's already started. You've seen that with moving from baseball now into flag football and other areas. But we're going to continue to expand, I think, both the physical footprint, but also the programming that goes in there. And I think over time, one of the things I'm excited about is today we're very much a destination-oriented offerings, and Cooperstown All-Star Village is sort of a rite of passage, once-in-a-lifetime thing, which is unbelievable. And I wish these things had existed either when I was a kid playing sports or even when I was just going through this with my own kids. I never, did anything like a Ripken baseball or a Cooperstown, but. As amazing as those are, one of the things we hope to do is really diversify our portfolio so we have more local, regional, and national destination programming in the mix. So I think you're going to continue to see us expand in all of those ways, including more diversity of the type of programming that we offer. And so we've got an ambitious vision. We think that connecting all of these amazing experiences is good for the consumer, and I'm excited to continue and invest in the facilities and the programming we offer.
You talked a little bit about what you're excited about when it comes to Unrivaled Sports. That kind of goes into my question, why you made the switch? Why go over to Unrivaled since you're new there?
Probably same story probably as a lot of people in this room. I have been through the youth sports experience both as an athlete, then as a parent, and I think that my wife and I joke all the time. I think like our best memories, our most indelible memories, and some of our worst all come around youth sports. And like we've had more sleepless nights because of youth sports than maybe anything else. And
that's a good thing.
Right, but it creates that passion, and that I think everyone here understands and is so important to us. And so the idea, I always through that experience thought, one, I love being part of this, and two, I think there's a really good business there, and three, I think you can do it a lot better than's being done in all sorts of ways. And so hopefully, one of the things as we continue to grow that we don't forget is that's the part that matters, is the experience that everyone is having, the kids, the parents, the families, and that we continue to invest in that and do a great job with that, because that's what's built this industry that we now talked about as being bigger than the NFL. It all starts with the passion of the experience itself and those participants, and we got to continue to deliver there. And
it just continues to get bigger and better thanks to people like you, Wayne. Greg, we talked about your vast experience and expertise when it comes to this and the industry in general, but what do you feel like is the most exciting part of the club level within the industry?
It's a great question. I think the most exciting part of the club level is the professionalization of it, is that you've got more high-level coaches getting into the space, coaching kids, hopefully teaching them the right way, preparing them, for their career in sports. And for most kids, your career in sports is 9 years old to whenever you stop playing in high school. So I think anything that you can do to make that journey better, more positive, more time with your family and friends and growing new relationships, the better. I also think on the club level, the fact that technology and media have really been major influences and impacted the space. Kids are getting a chance to build their own brand and kind of have an entrepreneurial experience as young kids, which can go wrong and can also go right. And I think either way, it's an exciting thing. And I think the merger of technology, sport and society is an amazing thing, and it gives these kids a social experience that I didn't have as a kid, and I think these guys didn't have as a kid, and just provides a world of opportunity.
Let's go off of that for a second. Technology is such a big part of what we do every day. There's student athletes and parents of student athletes sitting out there that are probably checking their phones as we speak. It's just a part of what we do every day. So how do you think that that helps fuel all of this, the travel youth sports industry? Is that one of the driving forces behind it?
Well, I think it all comes down to connectivity, right? I think you're going to see over time video continuing to improve so that, parents and grandparents and aunts and uncles can watch kids playing online and streaming. That's going to continue to improve. The social media and the celebration of the athlete. I think you look at, you walk around here in this world-class venue, you see the step and repeats and things of that nature, where kids are getting, player of the game pictures after and posting on social media. And even as a young kid getting celebrated, that's a memory that's going to stick with you your whole life. So I think technology and information has a lot of positives in it. It can be overwhelming, but it can enhance the overall experience of the youth athlete.
Yeah, it's crazy the experiences that youth sport athletes are having right now. And again, we talk about bigger and better. It's going to continue to trend that way. Ryan, you're so well versed in the media space. You talk so much about the podcast that you guys are doing. But what are you seeing when it comes to the consumption of content? Where do you see it the most, whether it be coaching, highlights, conversations, marketplace? Where do you see that consumption being had?
It's everywhere, and that's the opportunity and the challenge. And I think that's, just to kind of piggyback off of what Greg was saying, and even to your previous question about technology, like we think about the youth sports industry at large really having a bit of a value mismatch. The fragmentation and the local nature of youth sports, like some of that is inherently, you don't want to take it away. Youth sports are inherently local, like politics are inherently local. But that doesn't mean that some of this professionalization and consolidation can't be a really good thing for the industry. That you can, that you can offer better services, that you can, lower that cost discrepancy and value mismatch that we see. To your question about media, like that's an incredibly fragmented landscape in and of itself. And so what we're trying to build essentially as a service offering, as a utility, as a centralized platform, that if you have questions about the right and wrong ways to participate in youth sports, whether that be how should I think about travel club participation? Is it right for me at this age? How do I think about recruiting an NIL? How do I think about very tactical things like hitting or swinging lessons? That you think is the place where you start, but our content will live across all the platforms where people live every day also. So when we think about Greg Olson sitting down and having a conversation with Sean Johnson and getting very in the weeds about gymnastics, it won't only be on the YouThink platform. It'll be on Instagram and TikTok and YouTube and all those other places, because you have to be where they're at.
What's some of the feedback that you've gotten from some of those conversations that you're talking about? And again, it's on one platform, which is great. Obviously, you're talking about Instagram and all those other things, but Youth Inc. is the genesis of that. So what's the feedback that you're getting from some of these parents and student athletes that go and see these really robust conversations across all different sports?
Yeah, truthfully, I can't take any credit for that. Like, this was Greg's brainchild that he started in 2022, but he will tell you that as he was traveling around to the LakePoints and the Ripken baseballs of the world as a coach and as a parent, that every weekend he would have different families come up to him and thank him for creating this content and answering these questions. And as I came across it, as my kids are still young, but I've been in the youth sports industry through a separate venture for a decade, you could see that what he was talking about was important. And they were the same conversations that I'd had as a quarterback coach for a decade. But now here's this platform that gives access to this great information for everyone. It's not siloed to a sideline or backroom conversation.
Yeah, I think that's really important. And I scrolled through YouThink for a little bit, and I could just see so many different robust conversations, which I implore all of you guys to go check out, because it's not just one conversation. There's so many. It's not just football. It's not just baseball. There's gymnastics. There's so many other things on there as well. Wade, let's go back to you and Unrivaled Sports. I know that in 5 years, it's hard to see where you guys are going, but you talked a little bit about the goals and the aspirations and making the experience better. Where do you want to see Unrivaled Sports go here in the near future?
Well, gosh, when you look at what's happened in 9 months, it's hard to sort of think out
Sure.
5 years because we've been aggressive, we have an ambitious vision, and so hopefully it's a lot of what we're doing, and we haven't lost sight of that, just providing really amazing experiences for kids and their families. But there's just a lot more of it. More locations, more, like I talked about, more diverse programming that we're doing across multiple sports. I think lots of what we're doing applies across beyond baseball, and so I think you'll see expansion into other sports. And I think ultimately it's funny that often, I mean, we're just really getting started. People, I remind people, hey, we've bought like 10 mom and pop businesses in the last 18 months. And so we've got a lot to do to just get better at what we're doing. And I think you'll see that over time. We're building what we think is a great team so that we can deliver on this promise of the, unrivaled experiences across the country.
I know you've learned a lot in a short amount of time because you're talking about your aggressive approach and what you guys are tackling so early on in this project and this mission. But when it comes to the momentum around travel and youth sports, what do you feel like you've learned the most?
I think I touched on it a little bit. I think the ability to be at control sort of an end-to-end experience is really important to us, and that our company was built sort of natively like that through Cooperstown and Ripken, where those facilities were built to host tournaments. But the more I understand the business, there's lots of facilities that either lease fields or run tournaments, not always do both. We really believe in our role and in both controlling all aspects of the experience. So that's one of the things we've learned. I've learned lots of acronyms for lots of different.
Got to write them down.
And so I'm getting more up to speed there, and. But I think, mostly what I've learned is all the great stuff, because there's just, as we see today, so many people that are passionate about not just being in this industry, but because this is such a precious thing for so many of us, because it's our kids and it's kids playing sports. There's just a lot of care that goes into this industry to get it right. I've learned a lot from the Ripkens specifically, and sort of their view and vision for what Ripken baseball means. And I think, while they carry a big megaphone because of who they are, I think that exists in all sorts of parts of the industry. I think, and Greg touched on this a little bit, one of the things that's been great is that not one of the businesses that we've become partners with in the last year or two was built to be sold at one point. They were all built as passion projects 15, 20 years ago. They either saw an opportunity, a need, something they were really passionate about. And so, that's what we're filling the company with, people that are really passionate about providing amazing youth experiences.
And it's people like yourself who had those experiences. You mentioned some bad ones, but some good ones as well, too, that drive that passion behind the industry, which I think is incredibly important. Greg, your final question. What are some of the trends that you've been seeing when it comes to the momentum of travel and youth sports right now?
It's a really good question. I think, one, you've seen sports tourism explode in the last 5 years. I think that's a huge thing. You're seeing more and more public-private deals around the country, and CVBs being really active to draw events. So I think that travel is part of the fabric of youth sports now more than ever. The experience, the ability for kids to get away, bond with other, kids of similar and dissimilar backgrounds, which I think is a wonderful thing. Families getting time to go in, but you're also seeing that it's a huge business, right? And I think that that's a huge thing. The sports tourism business is multi-billion dollars. We saw some of the numbers earlier here in the opening address. And the trend is, I think it's going to continue to go because it's a professional vehicle within the space. And I don't see it slowing down anytime soon.
I was literally just thinking there was no signs of slowing down at all in this industry. Ryan, I want to close with you. You live so much in the data-driven world right now. So with it being such a data-driven world, not just for you, but for a lot of people, so many stats are thrown around. How do we actually validate and properly compare them?
It's funny. I was talking with someone as we throw all the industry stats and the size and all of that, and it's directionally right, but in a lot of ways, like, no one really knows.
Yeah.
You know, I think back to the last 2 years, and I set off down this path inside Fanatics, and I met with more than 100 companies, private equity firms, manufacturers, apparel brands, equipment companies. It was a really unique seat to sit in to get a comprehensive understanding of where the industry's at, and why I think it's such an awesome time to be in this industry. You've seen so much of the growth in the travel club space over the course of the last decade, and now people like institutional investors are starting to look at this and say, like this, there's actually real opportunity here. And that can be a double-edged sword, right? Like private equity doesn't always have the best reputation, but with patient capital and the right operators and the right mission-driven companies and folks, the right government support, like all of those things should be really, really positive for the industry. So I think as we professionalize the industry, we start to understand that data, collecting it, digesting it, applying it in a way that just really hasn't happened in this industry before because of the local nature of it and the fragmentation and the lack of professionalization. So hopefully all this data makes us smarter over time.
I think it will in time, and also understanding it as we move forward, I think can only help everyone and help this industry grow. Thank you very much, you guys. Round of applause for these three gentlemen. Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it. Great stuff. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So a couple of the key things that we learned from that is that this industry has a trajectory that is just continuing to rise, and it's not slowing down anytime soon, right? That's what we continue to hear from each of these panelists that come up here and discuss these topics, and that it's only going to get bigger and better. That's where we are now, and the future is so bright for this entire industry. Up next, we have a couple of fun videos planned for you. I want to bring my friend, Corey McCartney, to the stage. Good, how are you? Corey, no stranger to LakePoint, the digital and media director here at LakePoint Sports. You are all over the place all the time, and you have some very fun videos to share with us, right?
By the way, I can't believe we got this many people to put away their phones for Amazon Prime Day to come hang out.
Oh, wait, I forgot about that. Where's my phone? No, I'm just kidding.
But yeah, we had a really awesome opportunity these past few months to team up with Johnsonville, and they've got this mission to bring the positivity back to the internet. We know, obviously, all of us who get on social media know how chaotic and toxic it can often be. So we got this kind of promo video to show you guys a little bit of the mission that Johnsonville has.
If nearly 80 years of sausage making has taught us anything, it's this. Turn down the temperature. It's the best way to enjoy our products. But who knew this simple sausage wisdom would also be sage advice for all of humanity? Now hear us out. Sausage is the ultimate hangout food, but the sad truth is, people are hanging out a lot less these days. We're fired up, divided up. We've turned the temperature up to a point where disagreeing about something has to mean everything. But does it? This much? At Johnsonville, we believe that most people are mostly good, and they should be treated that way. That means less trolling and more tailgating, less doom scrolling and more dinner parties, less lashing out and more lazy breakfasts, less judging your neighbor and more loving your neighbor. Okay, we're just a sausage company, and the world is full of real problems sausage can't solve. To that we say, stay passionate. Stand up for the things you believe in. Just leave room for tasty hangs with good, imperfect people. Because when the temperature gets too hot for too long, we're left with nothing but a bitter taste in our mouths. But when we twist that knob to medium-low and let our individual flavors blend, when we take time to keep it fun and keep it together, well, that's when we keep it juicy.
What a great video there by Johnsonville. How did it go?
So as I mentioned, it was a really unique opportunity, and it almost came to us with, I don't say a blank slate, but kind of this idea of how do you find great stories to tell. So this being a sprawling campus, we really tried to tie into the people that we have here the boots on the ground to be able to help us find stories that matter. So whether that was, fans that were here, whether it was the players themselves or LakePoint Sports staff. So that really ended up being, I think, the biggest driver for us is the people that we have watching the game, scoreboard operators, the day-to-day workers were helping us find those really great stories. Prep baseball in particular was key for this, and we ended up finding a really cool story about a player from Alabama with autism named Jacob Price, and we were able to tell the story of him and finding a home for himself on the baseball field.
Sometimes one at bat can mean everything. That's the case for Jacob Price, an Alabama teen with autism who has found a home and an opportunity as part of Dinger Nation.
Even though I struck out, it's not the end of the world. I got faith, and I want to tell you, it's an honor for Beckman to have me on the team and these coaches to give me this energy and to bless me. And the Lord found me a team. The Lord gave me the team.
His dad reached out to us back at the end of last summer. Was wanting to be part of a team. Loves baseball. Sister's a college pitcher. We run a fall league. Got Jacob to be part of it. Came out in the fall league, got him some at bats, and actually smoked one hopped the fence. And I couldn't tell you, the whole crowd just erupted from it. And it brought a different energy to everybody who was playing. So it was kind of infectious. He puts baseball into a little bit different perspective for everybody. And baseball's a fun game, and it kind of helps us remember that, hey, let's have fun when we're out here.
Having Jacob, he's always a great time. Always let you know that God's got your back. Always has a smile on your face. Great guy to be around. Let you know that having at bats is just a blessing.
When I saw Jacob, I just thought he needed help. I have special needs cousins, and I know how to handle it well, and I just like to have a good time with him because he's funny.
It's been real fun. My mom is a special education teacher, so I've been around it for quite a long time. She's been that my whole life. I've got a lot of time around it, and it's fun. I'll go help out with her and deal with it. And it really is just fun helping them out and having them as part of the team. It makes them a lot happier, and just to be treated like a normal person.
And while his playing time may be limited, Jacob brings plenty of enthusiasm and energy in the dugout, and he does it in his own unique way.
You know where he's at? He's that pitcher. He's going to be in that baby stroller. Ew. Itchy, gaga. Here we go. Pitcher and balls potatoes over the fence. Hey, way to put that pitcher in his baby stroller. Yeah.
They're unforgettable, and everyone on the team has their favorite Jacob cheer.
I like his new one, his Goo Goo Gaga, whatever it was.
I would have to say we started him out with him yelling "you" at the pitcher. It'll be funny because he'll just start screaming at the top of his lungs at you, and it always makes us die out laughing.
My favorite one has to be Skibbity Toilet Ribs. Has to be.
Oh, my favorite cheer has to be Grandpa's Potatoes. My first time ever meeting Jacob, I was up to bat, and it kind of just threw me off whenever he yelled it at me while I was in the box. Had to call time, readjust myself, just take a minute, and I was like, he's gonna be a good time.
While he makes it fun, Jacob also provides a unique perspective for his Dinger Nation teammates.
I need to be more grateful and appreciate the reps that I have, because the reps that he has, he doesn't get as much as I have, but he takes it really serious, and he loves every single second of it.
These are my teammates, and I love them. I wouldn't trade 1 minute for them, and I wouldn't trade nothing from them, and these teammates make me feel like family.
He's the best. That was so great.
Yeah, and I think that we get so caught up in the cutthroat nature of the kind of competition that we have here, especially during the summertime. And for him to provide the perspective that he does for his teammates, I think it really, to me, was at the root of what we were trying to accomplish with this campaign.
Yeah, you heard so much about what his teammates are learning from him. They're certainly learning those cheers too as well. What was your favorite part about getting to know Jacob?
I just think the infectiousness that he has, just you could see it with the other teammates, just the way that he connected with them and kind of just made them, as you heard from that kid there, just appreciating the opportunities that they get to play the game.
Well, Corey, thank you so much. You're doing incredible work here. I appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
of you. Killing it.
Thank you. I'm gonna have to take some of that enthusiasm from him myself. That was so infectious. It was so wonderful. And thank you to Corey for constantly bringing those great stories and bringing them out of LakePoint. I think that's really special as well. Our next panel, there are some familiar faces for you guys, I think, especially those of you that follow collegiate baseball. You'll recognize one of them very closely. And then, of course, we have a former professional baseball player, a former storyteller for ESPN. We have a lot of really cool people on this next panel. The headwinds impacting the travel, youth, and sports industry. Please welcome to the stage Tom Farrey, Eric Backage, and CJ Stewart. Hi. Thank you. All right. Does it say who you are yet? I was going to say, can you guess where he coaches? Look at the colors. You came ready in Clemson, Coach.
I'm ready.
This is going to be a really insightful panel. You have 3 men up here who have a plethora of knowledge when it comes to impacting the travel and youth sports industry. They live it every day. They have lived it in the past. Coach, I'll start with you. There's so many ways I can go as a current head coach in collegiate baseball. Shall we start with what happened yesterday? Can we do that?
Sure.
Okay, so what I'm talking about is, you'll explain it a little bit more broadly, but a lot of people are very interested in NIL, so I'm just gonna go ahead and start strong off the bat with you. The NIL is affecting the collegiate space every single day in every sport, but there was a new ruling that came out yesterday. Tell us what it was and how it affects your team moving forward.
So everybody's probably familiar with the House versus NCAA lawsuit, and there was some settlement language that came out yesterday, but basically rosters are being reduced, scholarships are going up, and this is huge news in the college baseball landscape or just the college athletics landscape. Our roster in particular is going to be cut by 15% next year, but our scholarships go from 11.7 potentially all the way up to 34. And same thing with football. Football's rostered now 105. Every sport is affected, men, women. So this is huge news in the college baseball world, in the college athletics world. But if you connect some dots beyond that, and recruiting is already really hard, getting recruited is already really hard, and then what's driving some of the irrational spend and some of the irrational behaviors of parents like myself. For example, we have a 15-year-old who was supposed to play a tournament in Jupiter, Florida, and my wife and I had a legitimate conversation a few days ago of how we're going to get to Florida through a hurricane if this tournament's going to be played. And then we looked at each other like, we're part of the problem. This is nuts. But these roster spots are so highly coveted, and now they just got harder to get.
You talk a little bit about how the NIL is changing the landscape of college coaching, but it goes far beyond that, and especially as a collegiate coach, it starts at the youth baseball level, and then when they're in high school as well, travel ball. So how does that dictate the way that you operate as a collegiate baseball coach?
Yeah, so I've been a huge proponent of NIL in the college baseball world because have historically been an equivalency sport. And historically, that means that playing college baseball is synonymous with taking out student loan debt. So NIL was used to subsidize paying for school. So it wasn't pay for play, it was pay for school. So we've been trying to get as creative as possible to help our players earn NIL dollars to cover their costs. And that's really all it was, is to cover their costs. The little secret is once the IRS stripped all collectives and NIL companies of their 501c3 status, now all the donors that were contributing are much more reluctant to put their money into something that they're not getting a tax benefit. The other little secret is our players are being taxed on the NIL dollars that they get. So this has been a hurdle that all of us as college coaches have had to cross, had to jump over. And the cost of doing business has changed. What used to be a good offer for equivalency sports, a percentage of a scholarship, Now it seems like the minimum qualifying offer to get a good player is a full ride, and in some cases, a full ride plus. So like Dennis said, you know, if you can capitalize on your name, image, and likeness, meaning you're a proven player at your school and you can earn and make money on top of that, then great. But it's turned into the Wild West because it's turned into a pay-for-play kind of thing, especially at the football, basketball levels.
Every time you turn around, you're having to change something as a college coach because that landscape is changing so much. So younger student athletes and younger aspiring student athletes are going to have to pay attention to that. So we'll come back to you and get more on that in a second. CJ in the middle over there with that nice looking hat on. CJ is an Atlanta native. You played for the Chicago Cubs. You're an Amazon #1 best-selling author. You do a lot of really cool things, but your personal story, and just in the 15 minutes that you and I had to talk before this panel, it has such a large impact on why LEAD was created and why you are the way that you are, why your mission and your passion is behind LEAD. So tell us a little bit about your background and why you were so passionate about starting this program.
Yes, so I am CJ Stewart, and born and reared in Northwest Atlanta, the Bankhead community, and just so that people understand that Atlanta is the city, but Atlanta is the culture. And so then when we started thinking about the Bankhead community, which is poverty-stricken then and still is now, even Atlanta today, if you're born into poverty, you have a 4% chance of making it out. And Atlanta is #1 for income inequality based on race in America. And so now when we start thinking about me being a kid in 1976, having two very young parents, struggling with social capital and financial capital, I fell in love with baseball at 8 years old. A Cubs fan, my granddad would watch a lot of the games, and so it was funny because I noticed that at Wrigley Field they had ivy on the wall. And my grandparents had kudzu in their backyard. So I'd get some rocks and hit them over the fence and imagine that I was in Wrigley Field. Fast forward, and I started playing baseball at Cascade Youth Organization. So at this point, travel ball doesn't exist. I was very fortunate because I would regularly show up for games and civil rights leaders would be there, like Coretta Scott King, John Lewis, Maynard Jackson. So for me as a young black kid that's living in poverty and being around so many powerful people, I'm truly believing that I can do whatever I want to do. Fast forwarding, I was drafted by the Cubs out of high school because I had a lot of strong black leaders that made sure I was in the right place at the right time, and was subsequently drafted again and played in the Cubs organization. But had my first opportunity to play baseball at East Cobb when I was 14 years old, and the struggle then still exists now where if we get past the conversations about black boys not being able to come from families that had the money to play baseball, because there are a lot of poor families that still spend an enormous amount of money for their kids, but there is a social cost for black kids to now code switch and go into predominantly white environments trying to play baseball. And as much as we would love to say that baseball is just this universal thing, there is a black way and a white way to play it, and I don't have a whole lot of time to unpack that, but it is what it is. And so with LEAD, what we do is we provide an opportunity for black boys to develop into major league players and major league citizens, and to be able to show up and be openly black, and they will be good enough to play at Clemson, but making sure that we have great coaches like yourself that will allow them to show up and not have to be somebody that they aren't.
I think all of that stuff is really important, and also getting that message out there and educating people, not only through your own experiences, but also the realities of how it actually is, I think is incredibly important. You mentioned it just a little bit, how you're using LEAD to enact change, not only in the present and future, but how are you doing that?
Yeah, so, you know, the thing that's very important is the model that we use is sports-based youth development, which is in part a competitor to travel ball pay to play. And so we compete just like travel ball, but with sports-based youth development, it is the intentional use of sports to help children make healthy transitions into adulthood. So we all experience a high level of stress, but if that stress is not buffered, then it becomes trauma. And when you start to deal with trauma, then it starts to affect your brain. And so for children that come from affluent families, that barrier is going to be, or that buffer is going to be sports. But it costs a lot of money to play sports. It costs a lot of money to be in environments where they're safe and they're healthy. And so for us, our children that cannot afford to do that, they pay us with the improvement of their grades, attendance, and behavior. The other thing that's very unique about us is our progression to performance. So the first thing that we establish is making sure that they're protected. Then they learn how to participate. Then they learn how to practice. Then they learn how to play. And then they learn how to perform. And so as we're dealing with children, and our children right now, we have a focus on African-American children that are living in Atlanta, baseball for boys and tennis for girls. We just got back from Jupiter. And so, you know, when you think about taking a roster of 16 black boys to Jupiter, covering flights, covering hotels, and telling them that when we go out here, we're expecting to win. So much so that before every game, they have to submit a guarantee an hour before the game. So I guarantee I'll only strike out one time, I'll only make 2 errors, whatever it is. Upon not fulfilling that guarantee, you got 2 choices. You can either be substituted immediately, or you can do 200 push-ups in 20 minutes after the game. But these are children where we have to have a trauma-informed approach and an evidence-based approach so that they can show up on campuses like Clemson and helping them win national championships.
And you guys are consistently doing that. I'm sure we'll get into that in a little bit. I want to get into some of the graduation rates and all of that fun stuff of LEAD because you guys are doing a lot of really great work. Tom over there on my far side, Tom is the founder of the Sports and Society program at the Aspen Institute. You jumped over to the Aspen Institute after spending many, many years at ESPN, and you're also a part of Project Play. So I want to talk about Project Play, its inception. Tell me where it came from and the driving force behind it.
Happy to, but first of all, let me commend you on your program, CJ. It's really incredible. I'm curious, how is it supported? Philanthropic dollars, corporate? How do you?
So it's a third. So individual donations is very important and a huge part. We also have corporations, and then also corporations that support us, Google, Georgia's Own Credit Union, the Atlanta Braves, and then we also have foundations that provide support as well. We can't have fun without funding, so we're always working hard to raise even more money.
Talk to this guy afterward if you feel like you can support him. And I also want to thank Eric. He came to the Project Play Summit a few years ago, and he is one of those college coaches who sees the big picture, and you know, from the entry level of sport to the college level and beyond, and really appreciate his perspective and how he's been an important part of Project Play and his insights. Your question is like, how did Project Play get started?
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, so I was a reporter for ESPN, Outside the Lines, E60. I was the bad guy. I was the one who would put people on the hot seat and tell them, try to get to the bottom of some issue. These half-hour shows, and they're great. I'm really, really proud of that journalism. But at some point, I was like, you know what? I want to be part of the problem-solving process, too, not just to break down the problem. How do we build something back better? So I wrote this book back in 2008 called Game On, the All-American Race to Make Champions of Our Children when I was with ESPN. And it really was the nation's first journalistic survey of the landscape of youth sports. It tried to explain our sport ecosystem, that if we're the world's sports superpower, then why are only 1 out of every 4 or 5 kids physically active? And why are the parents freaking out on the sidelines? And why are we seeing this concussion and these burnout and overuse injuries? And it took a lot of work because there were thousands of reporters assigned to covering the NFL. No one's assigned to actually cover youth sports, at least in this kind of way. So put the book together, did the lecture tour. One of the places I spoke was the Aspen Ideas Festival. The Aspen Institute has been around for about 75 years. If there's a complex social challenge, there's a program at the Institute that is there to attack it. They didn't have anything on sports. They asked me to start something up. I said, maybe this is a way to take my Rolodex and my knowledge and the Institute's abilities to reach into C-suites and the White House and other very important places and create a shared conversation around what good looks like in youth sports and a set of strategies that we can all begin to rally around. So what you see on the screen here, or I see on my screen, is our seminal playbook, Sport for All, Play for Life, a playbook to get every kid in the game. 8 strategies for the 8 sectors that touch the lives of children. And it's organized our behavior the whole time. None of it is rocket science. Number 1 is ask kids what they want. There's revitalize in-town leagues. There's bring back free play. There's encourage sports sampling. There's train all coaches. Again, not rocket science. Stuff that people can nod their heads at and begin to develop policies, practices, and partnerships that hopefully can move toward this model of sport being accessible to all, and you don't stop playing at the end of high school or the end of middle school. You're actually active into adulthood. That's what healthy communities look like. You know, you have to do it with sports. So, yeah, it's been 10, 11 years of bringing together the professional leagues and the media companies and the Nikes and the Under Armours and getting around a table and saying, okay, what can you do? How do we figure this out? How can we take mutually reinforcing actions to build this model of sport for all, play for life?
You brought up something that I'm actually going to talk to each one of you about, and that I know each one of you is passionate about speaking about. It's accessibility to sports. It's not universal for everyone when it comes to the accessibility of sports at a young age. And you just touched on it a little while ago, but also you were on a You Think Sports podcast with Greg Olson, not to tie everything in here, talking about accessibility and what it looks like at a young age. How have you seen that grow, and where do you feel like it can go over the last couple of years?
So, sport when I grew up as a kid, maybe I'm sure many folks in the room, you're going to start nodding your heads at this. Sport for me was, you know, I slipped on a uniform, I think, for the first time at age 7 or 8. And even after that, I played a multitude of sports. But most of my sports activity was pickup play. Hopping on my bike, going 4 blocks away, making up games with my friends, coming back at when the sun goes down, no parents watching. And it was an experience that I owned. I owned my youth sports experience. And that's what powers me today. I play beach volleyball 3 days a week in San Clemente, California. I love it. I love my body in motion. And that would not have happened if I didn't sort of own my experience early on. What's happened over the past 25 years or so has sort of been the commercialization. I wouldn't even call it the professionalization. It's the commercialization of the youth sport experience. There's been a lot of entrepreneurial activity, which is great. I mean, look at facilities like this. This shows what Americans can do when they understand a market opportunity and go hard at it. And a lot of the activity is good, but from a very early age now, kids are in uniforms like 3, 4, 5 years old. The travel teams are created when they're 7 and 8 years old, and when that happens, we begin to structurally push aside the kids from the low-income homes who can't afford the youth sports arms race, and then we end up heaping all this pressure, high doses of sport on the kids who are left, and that's where you get the overuse injuries. That's where you get the burnout. That's where you get 3 concussions by high school, and they can't play football anymore. So, that's what's happened. It's been driven in part by the chase for the athletic scholarship. Back in the early 90s, there were about $250 million a year in athletic aid that were distributed by D1 and D2 schools. Today, that's closer to $4 billion. Now, I'm curious to see how this, the recent news is going to change things. But this has been driven by the idea of parents that, maybe my kid can get a scholarship, or maybe they can get into a selective university, because they're being recruited by a coach. And it's going to be fascinating to see, with fewer roster spots, how the value proposition changes.
Coach, I want to piggyback off of you for a second when it comes to accessibility. You talked a little bit about it on our call, just in the way that you grew up and what it looked like for you as a kid, and now what it looks like being able to have access to all these different sports. As a college coach now, how do you navigate that? Because not everyone has the same opportunity when it comes to playing sports right now.
Yeah, different sports have different barrier to entries. In baseball, certainly with just the cost of stuff, the glove, a bat, the $300 a piece, that's going to have a natural barrier. But everyone on our roster, at least the ones, and the ones we recruit, they were multi-sport athletes as kids. They did not sports specialize prior to high school. And it's so important. It's something we could talk all day about this, about being an athlete first and then sports specializing later. And there's so many benefits that come to sports sampling and, being a part of the Aspen Institute's Project Play Summit, the Don't Retire Kids slogan, I was fascinated to learn that the average age of retirement in the United States is age 11. And that just seems insane to me. And when you know that the best athletes that go on to play pro and go on to play college were athletes first, it just doesn't make sense to ask these kids to sport specialize at a young age. They get coached by different coaches and maybe find ways to unlock their bodies. They can improvise and use different muscle groups like was mentioned earlier, but they're also expanding their network of friends. There's so many things when we ask our players, why did your 10-year-old self play? It's because they loved the sport and they loved having fun with their friends, and it has to be able to reconnect to that in order to fuel performance at our level. They weren't thinking about all the things they get now by playing well or the things the adults tell them that they get. So much value in sports sampling, creating athleticism first. And you see a lot of young kids get coached for accuracy at a young age, and it just makes them slower. Their bodies move slower. The extent of my coaching with my kids up until they were like 12 is just, swing as hard as you can, run as fast as you can, jump as high as you can, throw it as hard, let their bodies self-organize. And being able to do that through a multitude of sports creates a better athlete, which then carries them down the road.
You hit a couple of different things that we wanted to talk about, which is great. So another thing that I wanted to ask you about was the portal, because you and I had talked about it a little bit. It's a big disruptor to college sports. It can be a key component into how you build a roster. You're experiencing that as we speak. But what do you see the trend when it comes to the transfer portal? Because there are aspiring collegiate athletes who possibly could use it at some point. So how does it affect the younger kids and then up until we get to college and you're constructing rosters in different ways now?
Sure. So college coaches, we trust our eyes the most. We trust the data the least. I get hundreds of emails. College coaches get hundreds of emails. Hi, my name is, and these are my stats, and it's an auto delete. Because I don't know the competition level. I don't know who recorded those stats. And it's just, when we go to the portal and the transfer portal has exploded, we know their competition level. We know the reliability of the metrics in their data. So we trust it. And so as these roster spots shrink, we navigate as college coaches towards the older guy with the proven credentials. And so if I'm a high school kid right now, that makes me as a high school player and a parent very nervous, knowing roster spots are going down and college coaches are gravitating towards proven older players. So the reliable data becomes something that is extremely valuable. And Mark mentioned the Curve Test Center earlier, and that's a place where you can get third-party certified data. So a college coach like me can go and look at the data from a test center and know that it's trusted. And for kids and the parents who are spending all this money, instead of always going to the next tournament or showcase, actually being able to test, retest, and measure progress to know what's actually needed. What's the smart spend? Is it another tournament or showcase? Or do you need to work on your speed or your strength or whatever?
Hearing it from the source, I think, is really important for a lot of these parents out here who have student athletes getting ready to embark on the collegiate journey, hopefully getting to embark on the collegiate journey. So there's a lot of change happening in real time as we try to navigate that. CJ, on L.E.A.D's website, you talk about the 3 curveballs, and you talk about it to a lot of people that you meet as well. These are the 3 curveballs that can threaten a child's success: crime, poverty, and racism. How do you believe that these things play a role in impacting the youth and sports industry?
Well, specifically, as we're serving children within our year-round program, we have an elementary school rookie league and also a middle school league, and the vast majority of our students from Atlanta Public Schools are living at and below the poverty level. For our ambassador team, which is our performance team, we go more Atlanta Metro, and only a small percentage of those children, specifically because of where they're living, are not living at the poverty level, but it is an opportunity for our program participants to matriculate from elementary to middle to high school. But they are all experiencing levels of racism. And so when we talk about racism, we're talking about structural design that creates a level of benefit to one race versus another. And so when we do this, we're not appearing to be vindictive, but when we start looking at the fact that when I was born in 1976, about 18% of Major League Baseball players were black, and then we look today, it's less than 6%, and then at the college level, I'm sure it's under 5% now. So that's not a situation oftentimes where it's, I don't want this kid because he's black. But I'm just saying for me, if I were a white coach and I'm going out and I'm looking for players, I'm probably going to find players that are a lot like me. All things created as far as talent and so on and so forth, that may not be the situation for you, coach, but in my conversations with several white coaches, a lot of them would prefer to recruit kids that are a lot like them. And so with that being said, we have that decline. So now with us with LEAD, when we start talking about having the curve system, because of the fundraising under the leadership of my wife, Kelly, who's our CEO, we can actually bring black boys in there to take advantage of that. I'm sitting on a panel with you, so now we've gone to Curve. I get your cell phone number, I call you, so now they're gonna get the benefit of the doubt, respect, and trust. So that context is taken care of, and now their play on the field, that content is important. And so the differential advantage that we have with LEAD as we fight racism, we're talking about influence, we're talking about affluence, but we're also talking about advocacy. And so shout out to Mark O'Brien as well, just for even giving me the opportunity to be here. I met him about 3 weeks ago, and he came over to our training facility in the West End, and one of the things that I said is, I have a problem, and you can be a solution. For me as an African-American man doing the work that I'm doing, I do not need to be working in obscurity. I need to be seen. I need to be heard. And he said, oh, by the way, we got a summit coming up. So that's how we fight racism, where it is, again, not trying to be demeaning towards anybody, but there's a level of prejudice that counts our boys out. We scout out to count it out, and we want to make sure that they have everything that they need so that they can be in the best positions to be in the right place at the right time.
Just to give you a little bit of insight to LEAD and the numbers, if I may, 100% high school graduation rate of your boys, and young ladies, because there's tennis in there as well, 93% college enrollment, 90% receive college scholarships. So you're doing something right, my friend. You know, in your opinion, what's the biggest hurdle that the industry is currently facing when it comes to travel and youth sports? You've mentioned so many of them already, but what do you feel like is at the forefront of that?
So, you know, I was very excited when I was a kid having an opportunity to play rec baseball. So rec baseball has gotten a very bad name late days. So we call it foundation ball. And so when you think about a 3-story house, that bottom level of the house, which is considered by rec ball as we call it foundation. That's where children get an opportunity to develop a feel for the game, the fundamentals, and then have fun in that order. And so they stay on that level. They matriculate to the all-star level as they start to overcome their fears. And at that all-star level, what they're focusing on is we have 6 A's. So I have high-functioning ADHD, so in order for me to see the world, I gotta really see things in acronyms and so on and so forth. But painting that picture, when we think about those 6 A's, we believe that in order to show up at Clemson, you're gonna have to have attitude, awareness, ability to make adjustments, aptitude, athleticism, and aggressiveness. And so at that all-star level, typically those kids have really good attitudes, good awareness, and athleticism. So they move from foundation to all-star to now we're moving to the travel ball scene. Now these are the guys that are playing at the top levels. And so they're gonna have at least 4 of those 6 A's, but the one that's most important is that aggressiveness. And within that aggressiveness, when we unpack that, it's going to be talent, not just physical, but mental, tactical intelligence, toughness, and tenacity. And so when we start thinking about that, unfortunately, black children that are living in poverty, many of them because foundation and rec ball don't exist, in order to play, they got to jump right into travel ball, facing kids with tactical intelligence, facing kids with lots of experience in the game. So within LEAD, our framework, which is based here in Atlanta, but we're now launching in November, December this year, a coaching certification that's gonna allow us to be more global. We're gonna be training a lot of coaches, not just black. Even when I think about children that I've coached from the Japanese culture, one of the things that I had to learn right away is I had to allow their children to bow down to me, because in Japan, that's how they respect their coaches and give them high reverence. So at the end of the day, for children, they need to be in that foundational level. all-star level and travel ball level. But in order to compete, they're going to have to go through all of those things and get outstanding coaching.
I think that what you've touched on, what Coach has touched on, and Tom, what you've touched on throughout this panel, one of the things that we're facing is cost. And Tom, you talk about it a lot. You talked about it on our Zoom call. Costs surrounding travel and youth sports. It is a big discussion right now. What do you see in terms of the trends when it comes to cost? How do we combat that? And where is it going in the future?
Well, the rec leagues are essential. We have got to find a way to make local, low-cost community play a quality experience. That comes down to training coaches. We've got to get to a place where parents don't feel like they need to jump to super expensive travel team when their kid's in second grade, because if they don't do so, then the bullet train has left the station and their kid won't have a chance to play in high school or maybe even college, right? So some people, I was a travel team parent, soccer, my kid played college. I know this experience. But I allowed my kid to go early because I did look at the high school team and everybody was doing club at a pretty early age. And I'm like, well, I don't want to foreclose on an opportunity for my kid to play at an advanced level. So I'll just go with it. Do we want to give up the Mother's Days and certain holidays and weeks during the summer to do this at that early of an age? No, we probably didn't, but you love your kid and you want your kid to have every opportunity possible. So I think the answer there is just to create more viable local low-cost experiences. How can we reinvest in the idea of kids playing nearby with classmates under the care of coaches who look out for their interests, but can also teach the game, who can teach a first touch in soccer, who know how to organize a practice, and maybe give parents the confidence to keep their kid in that local league for another year or maybe 2 years. And if that happens, the base of kids will grow and the travel team industry will benefit. You will actually have more kids, more tournaments, more teams as kids move into the teenage years. So that's what I would say is key. Let's all figure out how to optimize the local low-cost experience.
Optimization is key, and certainly in the travel and youth sports industry right now, and of course in the future, as you were mentioning. Coach, I'll wrap with you. We have an opportunity here where we have a collegiate head baseball coach in the building who can speak to some of these younger students who aspire to do that. And it is, again, I've said it so many times today, an ever-changing world and landscape. So what would your biggest piece of advice be to a travel or youth baseball player in the world of stats overload, as you had mentioned earlier, rankings, NIL, transfer portal, and performance? What do they need to know in order to hopefully be successful, and if they have dreams to play collegiate baseball, get there?
Yeah, well, there's a next level for everybody. I had to go to junior college out of high school in order to get to Division I. But I would say my advice would be, 1, surround yourself with good people. 2, put the target on growth. Everybody always wants to measure the outcome. In other words, if CJ and I raced each other, and CJ's way faster than me, but if we raced and I ran as fast as I possibly could, and CJ just ran fast enough just to beat me and he won the race, well, the target shouldn't be on the outcome of the race. It should be on the effort and how hard you competed. And, then when you run again, whether you won or lost the race is, are you making improvements to your time, right? And so many kids just want to put the target on the result. And am I going to this event and getting recruited? Well, no, measure your progress. And if you're hanging around with good people and you enjoyed playing on the team with your buddies and you like your coaching staff, then have measurables and understand this test-retest model and measuring progress. That's going to be the thing that you can hang your hat on, whether the opportunity materializes or not. At least you know you're getting better and putting yourself in the best position, because sports, hate to say it, but when you're an athlete, you're just the opinion of somebody else, and you may leave your best performance on the field or in the court or wherever, and nobody was there to see it. So just putting the target on improvement, perpetual, continual improvement, and more often than not, you're going to have a shot.
Effort, 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 effort is what you've said a lot and what a lot of you guys have said all throughout the afternoon. Tom, Eric, and CJ, thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Great stuff. That was great. Thank you. Awesome. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Awesome. I told you guys you would learn something, right? Wonderful stuff from each one of them. And so the natural progression of the way that the panel is going, now we have to look to what's next, right? What's on the horizon? And that is exactly what the topic is for our next discussion. What's on the horizon for travel and youth sports? Please welcome to the stage Will McIntosh, Steve Horowitz, and Lenny Daniels. Welcome. Welcome. Welcome, welcome. Hello, hello. Steve in the middle there just got to experience my alma mater. Hotty toddy, I went to the University of Mississippi. Sorry to all the Georgia fans in the room. You liked it?
Couldn't have been any more fun. What's better than the Grove?
No one is telling me to give a plug to Ole Miss right now, so we'll move on. Well, there's so many things that we can talk about when it comes to what's on the horizon, right? For those of you that are unfamiliar with Will, he is the president of NBC Sports Next. And tell us a little bit about NBC Sports Next for people in the room that don't know what it is and what you want your goal and mission to be at NBC Sports Next.
Yeah, so a lot of the people that are familiar with NBC or NBC Sports, they think about our investment in big time, sports rights like the NFL, like the Olympics, like the Big Ten, Notre Dame, PGA Tour, et cetera. But what a lot of people don't know is for the last decade, we have been investing significantly in the youth and travel sports technology ecosystem via a brand called Sports Engine. And so for us, we're one of the leading providers of software to tens of thousands of youth and rec sports leagues throughout North America. And we're working with them every day to help them run and grow their businesses and as part of that, grow participation in youth and travel sports. We're also the leading background screening and safety provider. So we'll perform over 1 million background screens on coaches, volunteers, anybody involved in youth and travel sports to make it safe for kids to play. And then, one of the things that we're investing in now, and one of the reasons why we're here, and I'm excited to be here, is we launched about 2 years ago a property called Sports Engine Play. And our mission is to, not unlike what us and other media companies have done in professional and collegiate sports, is to create a destination where if you're a parent or a grandparent or friend of a young athlete and you can't be there at the tournament or the game, you can watch it. You can stream it online. And timing is great. We just announced a great partnership with LakePoint in this facility. So we'll be outfitting this massive building with a lot of AI-infused cameras to help capture all the leagues and tournaments that come here, as an example.
Well, tell us a little bit about the partnerships since you brought it up. I was going to ask you later, but you already said it. So the inception of that partnership and what you're excited about when it comes to the future, what is that?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. In our business, there is a lot of desire and demand to be partners with facilities like LakePoint because and we saw some of the stats earlier, just the number of teams and competitions that happen in these facilities on an annual basis. So it's a big part of our strategy to partner with entities like LakePoint. Even though there's not a lot of them out there, there are, that's an area of the youth and travel industry that's seeing a lot of investment. And we have some great partnerships there. But for us, it's really to connect like this legacy of NBC Sports. And you think about NBC Sports, you think about the storytelling, think about coming out of what was an amazing Paris Olympics and all the great things we did there. It just makes sense for us to take a real interest in helping more kids play sport, because we know kids that play sport today are going to become the future fans of sport tomorrow.
You brought up all the things that NBC is doing. As an NBC employee myself, I was very busy during the Olympics and Sunday Night Football with the Falcons on it recently, so I know it well, and everything that you guys are doing at NBC Sports Next is really awesome for the future, which we'll get back to. Steve, in the middle, you have your hands on a lot of different things here in Atlanta when it comes to Inner Circle Sports. So tell everyone in the room what exactly is Inner Circle Sports.
Sure, and thanks for having me, and thanks to Mark and the LakePoint staff. This is so much better than spending my day in a locked conference room staring at numbers. But Inner Circle Sports is an investment bank. We're focused on the sports business. We spend our time helping people buy and sell sports teams, from the big, the Philadelphia 76ers. Here in Atlanta, we sold the Atlanta Hawks. Over in Europe, we bought the Liverpool twice and Inter Milan, and we did our smallest deal ever. We bought Wrexham for Rob McElhaney and Ryan Reynolds, which seems to have gotten an outsized amount of attention. We also help people invest around the sports business, data analytics, agencies, anything that really touches on sports, and in a growing way that has been the youth sports business. And finally, we help people finance stadiums and arenas around the world, and that is a business where we sometimes help the team owners and a lot of times help cities and municipalities figure that out. So we just finished up in Nashville right now, helping them with the NFL stadium, but that's sort of us in a nutshell.
And you've mentioned Mr. Blank, too, as well, to me.
We helped bring the soccer team here, so we were part of the group that brought the expansion team here.
So where do you see the most investment, momentum, and interest in sports as it stands today?
So I'll get back to youth sports in a second, but we represent the NWSL, which is the Women's Soccer League in America, and it's been amazing. I don't know why. I think I'm the oldest person on the stage. But you know, it's been, you know, women's sports has been sort of 2 years away from being 2 years away. And every time I thought Brandi Chastain scored that winning goal, and you know, the whole U.S. women's national team was going to propel kind of a whole league, it's kind of been fits and starts along the way. But something has changed in the last 2 years, and I can't put my finger on it. But between, you know, basketball, soccer, I know we have Jenny out here coming out, softball, volleyball, I think that women's sports is something that, from an investment perspective, something's just changed. And money, smart money, and interested people are here for the long term.
That does go back to youth sports, because a lot of these young girls are watching all of these things unfold in real time. You know, when I was younger, when Jenny was younger, it wasn't what it is right now, what has changed in the last 2 years, certainly. So I know that you touched on it very briefly just now, in that women's sports is seeing a surplus of interest. Where else do you see that interest coming from, and why is it such a big investment, women's sports, right now?
So I think there's been a whole forgotten segment, and I think that, you know, when you think of institutional capital finds its way into places where there's an opportunity to make money, and I think that, led by a number of different investment groups, we don't have a day that goes by where somebody doesn't call us up and say, we have a fund, we have a thesis, we have something where we really want to get behind women. And I would say it's the same thing for youth sports. It's the two leading places. There will always be people interested in owning professional sports teams. What could be more fun than to own an NFL team or something else? But I think in that level of investment below that, these are exciting times from a capital deployment perspective.
Yeah, speaking of what's on the horizon, that would be women's sports, and especially for the younger ladies, too, in the room, aspiring to go on and do bigger things at bigger levels that you're talking about. Lenny is the former president of Turner Sports here in Atlanta. Lenny, tell a little bit about your media background, your role at Turner, which obviously I just unveiled, and how the travel and youth sports industry kind of shaped a lot of that stuff.
Well, thank you. And, you know, you could go back to, well, first of all, I was at Turner for 30 years, ended up directing, started directing, ended up being president of Turner for the last 7 years. And, you know, it's interesting. When we looked, everybody wants to get younger, so that was a big part of what we wanted to do. And the idea of getting younger meant many different things, right? And to me, and to what we always believe, it's all about storytelling. It's all about media. And it always comes back to that. And we looked at things like Bleacher Report, for example. When we bought Bleacher Report, it was done, yes, to get younger, but it was also done to figure out how to differentiate yourself and how to bring the next generation fan and to tell stories in different ways. They were good at telling specific stories. We were able to take a local story, which we've talked a lot here, and turn it into a national importance. And that's where you get scale. That's where you drive the business in different ways. So, you know, at Turner Sports, we always were looking at storytelling stories the right way. To me, that is what youth sports really has to its advantage, and that's what's really going to drive the business of youth sports is media. If you look at the success of media in the world, success of sports in the world, it's media, and I think the success of youth sports is going to be through media.
And especially the younger that the kids are, what they do is they go to their phones and they look for these stories on their phones, right?
Of course. I mean, I've got a 16-year-old. I'm living the same thing everybody else is. And, you know, if you ask him if he's watched a game, his answer is yes. He hasn't watched the game. He's watched the highlights wherever it happens to be that he's watched it. And that's okay if we know that and we know how to monetize it and we know how to bring that story to a different type of audience. I mean, imagine, Dennis, what he did today. I mean, if you think about what do you remember from that whole conversation, it's going to be the last few seconds of that. That's the piece of the story that is important. Imagine him coming into a place like this and having that type of conversation with these kids. It's irrelevant what the game is, right? These kids need to understand there's more than playing or coaching. There's life in general. There's many different jobs. There's all kinds of different areas that you can get into. And to me, it all comes through how they learn. And these kids, they are learning through technology and stories.
Well, you're speaking my language, and why I even got into this business in the first place was to tell people stories, and that's what I'm passionate about, so I love that.
Yeah. No, it's critical. And I think of youth sports, you heard a lot about the competition aspect of youth sports. To me, it's a platform for how the youth use and develop with sports, right? And it could be playing, it could be coaching, but could also be so many other things that they just aren't exposed to. It's our job to expose them to these different things. That's where the billions of dollars, that's where the money's going to come in. So I think we have it's a large task. It's a hard thing to do, but combining all those things together and getting these kids to understand how they can get sports in their life in a different way is really important.
Speaking of exposure and investment, NBC Sports Next is certainly doing that at every single level, right? So what are you guys doing in terms of the steps you're taking to be the preferred platform for travel and youth sports industry? You mentioned it a little bit off the top.
Yeah, I mean, one of the interesting things we've been doing for the last 5 years, our parent company is Comcast, and actually here in Atlanta, we worked with Comcast to create a sports tech accelerator, again, about 5 years ago, and over these last 4 years, we have like roughly 1,000 startup companies that apply every year to be part of that program. We whittle it down to 10 that are selected. And the diversity of the ideas that are infused in those 10 companies and what they're doing across all aspects of the sports tech ecosystem is pretty fascinating. You know, our company invests a lot in innovation, and you know, an example of that is this accelerator. I think one of the interesting things about it is the technology that underpins the streaming platform I talked about earlier was actually created by one of those accelerator companies that we ended up acquiring. So we in building out the sports engine business over the last decade, we have invested a lot of capital, both in terms of expanding via mergers and acquisition, but also organically as well. So we'll continue to invest, and we'll continue to look for the most innovative companies that are out there to partner with or perhaps to do more with.
Tell us about the 10-year innovation investment in the youth sports space. What's the biggest thing you're learning and what you feel like is poised for a breakthrough?
I mean, I think the existence of this summit is an example of, I think, the real interest in in this space. If you look back to when we invested, again, about a decade ago, you didn't have nearly the strategic media companies that you see today that are investing. You didn't have private equity that's been coming into, especially the vertical that we operate within. And you think about the proliferation of all of the investment in sports. I mean, you've heard on this panel just the investment in team ownership and how that's evolved over the last 10 years. I know on the panel earlier we were talking about in some ways the professionalization of collegiate sports. There is, I don't think there's ever been more appetite or interest in investing in the space than there is right now.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about it all day. When you think about numbers and the NFL being the monster that it is, and then you basically triple that and you have youth sports, it is truly mind-blowing. There has never been a better time to be an investor in youth sports. And speaking of investment, Steve knows a lot about that. What do you think the driving investor interest is in the travel and youth sports industry?
You touched on it a second ago. When you look back at the professional sports, for those old enough to remember when the teams were owned by the local car dealership, and they kind of just ran, their ads through the team, and it really wasn't a professional organization. For all the people who joke, how did you become a millionaire, be a billionaire, and buy a sports team? That was the way it was sort of run. Ma and pa shop, you put the parking money in a shoebox. You've seen people come in the last kind of 20 years and added a sophistication to those investments, and I think youth sports is just starting to see that. What had been a regional, local, people volunteering, I think it's just, you're seeing professionalization all across the ecosystem, and that professional kind of investment into things to make it run more efficiently, I think is the excitement for a lot of these institutional investors.
I know most of the conversations that you have on a day-to-day basis are garnered and geared towards a professional setting, whether it be teams or ownership of a team. But when it comes to youth sports, how often does that come up in conversation?
Sorry, professionalization?
Yeah.
I think that when I think of professionalization, I really think of it as just having systems in place, things that are in place. But, part of that is also understanding the whole life of where the investments come from. As Will mentioned, it's not just the camps, which is what people, I think, first thought of in youth sports. But, as we might say in our business, it's the picks and shovels that are also important, that, from one part of, the journey through to the end, there are lots of different businesses that will touch people, and there's a lot of exciting places to invest along the way. And, as Lenny mentioned, content, there are great stories to tell, and, the more you can kind of take revenue, and not just raise prices for kids to play, and really have other places where you can promote what you're doing, I think it's just exciting all across the capital structure.
We saw a great example of storytelling earlier with Corey. He brought us that phenomenal story, and that's just one of thousands that can be told in the youth sports space for sure. And Lenny, to go back to your storytelling conversation that you were having earlier, traditionally, youth sports hasn't really been at the forefront of sports networks, and there hasn't been a big conversation about it, but it's trending in that direction. More media consumption is happening. You just mentioned it when it comes to youth sports. Where do you see the future in aligning media and youth sports?
Have you seen the P&L of some of these traditional media sports? But
Yeah.
there's a reason why this is happening, right? And I think youth sports is in. It's exactly what Steve said. It's an open book. Like there are ways to figure out how to monetize youth sports other than facilities and tournaments and so on. There's media, and within media, there's a million jobs, and there's other things in and around there that I think these companies are starting to look like. I've had many conversations with NBC, with Disney, with so on, and even when I was at Turner, I remember talking to Jimmy Pitaro about it, and we're like, we need to figure out the youth sports. That is what's growing. That's what's next. But it's incredibly difficult for a large billion-dollar traditional media company to figure out how to do that, right? And I think NBC Next is a great example of something that they're pursuing, keeping it a little bit outside of the traditional business, but yet having the backing of a Comcast is unbelievable. Disney should be doing the same thing with Wide World of Sports. There's a lot of these. They have a big advantage, but getting out of their own way is really, really hard. And I think, that's, you could look at it across the board. We had Goodwill games. We had a whole bunch of things that, if they're not making a dollar, you got to look at it a different way. Well, I think youth sports gives you the opportunity to tie a lot of the different things that go on in your traditional business back to something that actually is growing, and you don't have to pay $73 billion in rights fees.
You mentioned your 16-year-old earlier, so you're living that travel sports space very well, day in and day out. I know you are.
Yep. It's horrible.
No, you love it.
No, I go back to what
You
Mark
love it.
said. What I love about what Mark, everybody up here is saying, is the experience, stupid. The experience is horrible. You spend a fortune. I think I spent like 20 grand taking them to tournaments over the summer. And, you have to book a hotel through this, and then they won't call you back, and you have to change a date. And it is not a good experience. That's the problem. We all think we all know the problem, and it's nobody's going to pull it together. I was joking with Steve earlier, until Ted Turner comes in and decides to really spend a lot of money and really fix this thing the right way. It's going to be very hard to do, and that's why I think you see a lot of people, and what they should be doing is playing around the edges, playing with adjacencies, playing with things that there's a future, there's optimism there, but it's not easy.
We talked about experience on previous panels as well. So in your mind, especially since you're living it and you have a former media background, you did it for a very long time, but now you're a parent living on the other side of it, how do you fix it? How does it change?
Yeah, I don't know how you fix it. You got to take pieces and parts and adjust them as you can. I do think media, in my mind, I'm not just saying it because that's what I did, that is an opportunity that is not taking place right now. We talk about all these different facilities and all these different places. I just try to watch the varsity high school game from my kid's school, and it's an absolute horrible experience. If you could create a way to develop stories and storylines and the right way to tell them and the right way to get them out there and the right platforms to come with you to figure out how to make it work. I'd love to hear you will. How are you fixing the platform issue? How do you think you could actually aggregate these things and put them together? Because it's all over the place right now.
Yeah, I think that's a big part of the opportunity, and it is it's probably the most difficult place to, even if you just focus on one aspect of it, which is how do you scale a streaming business in youth and travel sports? There's not an easy answer to that. I think the good thing is technology's come around, and it's continuing to evolve to make it a lot easier. It's a lot more feasible today than it was even 5 years ago with the innovations that we've seen in AI as it relates to remote production. I'm sure you experimented with some of that at Turner. I actually think that's what makes this a really interesting opportunity. And if you go back to what we were talking about earlier around the money that's coming into the ecosystem, and with an eye towards systems and professionalization, I think the experience will improve. And I think about two of the panelists you had earlier in Three Step and Unrivaled. Those are both great examples of companies that have tremendous backing, that have come in, that have rolled up in part, just one part of the ecosystem, and they're creating standards, practices, systems across multiple sports that they're operating. And I think there's a lot of opportunity to do that in technology, in the running of tournaments and leagues, and the streaming perhaps of competitions as well.
Right. The other interesting place to look at content is outside the game itself, right? And I think that's what Greg Olson and that group could be looking at a little bit further. Is, you're going to stream the game, as you said, and that's fine, and that experience will be. But how you actually pull together content outside that game and take a local piece or something about a certain kid or whatever and make it a national story. That's the style that you need to create this content in for these kids to understand, and you got to deliver it where they are.
You bring up a really interesting point because there's so many different mediums now. We've talked about it with NBC Sports Next as well. There is streaming, there's television, there's YouTube, Instagram, TikTok. We can go down all the different mediums. How do you aggregate that into something that's more user-friendly, in your opinion?
Yeah, I think if we had that answer, we'd all be very wealthy. That's the problem today. Somebody will figure it out. I believe in the next, you probably know what, in the next 18 months, you're going to see consolidation. You're going to see a lot of these things change so that it won't be all over the place. You'll be actually able to find what you want to find in a more, efficient manner, if you will. These kids are going to go where they go, right?
Yeah.
And it really depends on your business and what you're trying to reach. If you're an NBC network, it's older. You're going to have to deliver it across a broadcast network. That's a little different than if you're trying to reach Chase, my kid who's 16, on TikTok or wherever he may be. You have to go where they're going, and you can't avoid it. We knew that with Bleacher Report. We could put things on there all day long. It didn't matter. You got to be where they are, and you have to go, to the places where they're going to watch the stuff. And by the way, where they're going to share it, because that's how you get scale.
Yeah, one of the things that we've talked about throughout each panel is that change is imminent, no matter what you're doing, and you just have to continuously change with where things are going. It's exactly what we're talking about. What is on the horizon for travel and youth sports industry? Steve, I want to go back to you and just talk a little bit more about Inner Circle Sports and what's on the horizon for you guys specifically and why you're excited about it.
So sports has never been more exciting. I think when you see the numbers for ratings, for what's going on, and our world has historically focused on the high net worth individual who wanted to buy a team, and there's so much liquidity, the processes that go on to buy a team, it's crazy. The number of people we run into who can afford to buy a $2, $4, $6, $8 billion team. It's impossible to think that there's that sort of wealth around. And every now and then, when I think there can't be another one, somebody I've never heard of who had a company in the middle of the country is there to buy the team. So for us, the team sports side remains exciting. As I said, we're right in the middle of the process for the next expansion team for the Women's Soccer League. It's something that just has been exciting both in my heart and, kind of the growth, watching the growth of the league. So that's been exciting. But, in our being around the youth sports business, kind of the better experience for the kids, knowing that it's touching on people who can't afford it, that's part of the conversation. And seeing that, we're excited in some of the companies we're working with and having that be a more equitable investment.
I think all of those things are exciting, and there are some challenges that we've talked about throughout the day, but the bottom line is that it can only go up from here. There's ways to change things, there's ways to make it better, and ways and reasons to invest as well, which I think is important. Let's wrap with NBC Sports next. You talked about your partnership with LakePoint. Beyond that, what are you excited about?
Yeah, I think like what we wake up and do every day is and you heard Lenny talk about it earlier. I know Dennis Scott mentioned it before as it relates to his involvement with his kids. What we're trying to do every day is improve that experience for parents and young athletes as it relates to their kids' involvement in all these sports that we've grown up either playing, watching, have some passion for. And so I think it's very early in the evolution of the business of youth and travel sports. The partnerships with LakePoint and others that kind of surround LakePoint are what really excite us, because I think we are going to be able to improve that experience, mostly through technology, but also through other means as well.
What's on the horizon for travel and youth sports is there's a lot on the horizon, is what you can learn from this panel. They brought up some really good points. Will, Steve, Lenny, thank you so much. So much. Great job.
Nicely done.
Thank you. Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, I hope you guys have been taking notes, because there has been a lot that we've learned today in terms of what the problems are, how we can fix them, how we move forward. All of those things are important in the conversation that we're having and have had throughout the last few hours. A lot of you know that there is a very special guest in the building, and there's been plenty of them, but she is someone who, it's funny, I've just been observing when people say, oh, Jenny's in the building. Have you met Jenny before? And they simply say, no, but I know who she is. You know who Jenny Finch is, but before we bring her on stage and show her off a little bit, I want to bring back Mark O'Brien on stage and Jeff West. see you again. Great to see you. Hello, again.
Thank you. Again.
Again.
Thank you.
All right, so this is the Impact Award presentation presented by Coca-Cola United, and we just keep getting bigger and better over here, Mark. It's great every single year, and I know you're really excited about this next guest, but tell us a little bit about the Impact Award and its inception.
Yeah, well, you know, it was an idea. Greg Barkhoff and I were talking one day, and Greg said, you know, I think, you know, with everything that we're doing nationally from a national scope perspective and the work that's being done collectively in the industry, we need to create a platform that really recognizes an individual or an organization that is truly making a difference currently, and maybe they have aspirations to do more in the travel and youth sports industry. And so that was the inception of the National LakePoint Impact Award and how we created it. And we go through a rigorous process of evaluating really individuals or organizations that are making significant contributions and have a platform to do more in our industry. And as we go through that process of evaluating individuals and organizations, it's really exciting to see the work that's being done, but also, you know, selecting someone that represents not only the impact they're making, but the values that we all aspire to have as individuals or organizations in the market.
And she is certainly very impressive. We could talk about her at length, but before we get to the actual Impact Award, let's take a look at this quick video.
Jenny Finch's dedication to youth sports goes beyond her legendary career on the field. As one of the most iconic figures in softball, from her days playing travel softball as a young girl to her prolific college career at the University of Arizona and her record-setting professional softball career following her silver and gold Olympic medals for Team USA, the National Softball Hall of Famer's on-field success has served as a catalyst to her off-the-field impact. Her unrelenting dedication to leading nationwide camps, to her academy, mentorship programs, her continued philanthropy, to serving as a Major League Baseball ambassador, including providing the annual Jenny Finch Empowerment Award, supporting young female athletes across the country, Jenny continues to inspire and empower millions of young athletes as she serves as a leading voice and advocate of women's sports. Today, we proudly present Jenny with the 2024 LakePoint Sports Impact Award. Her leadership, philanthropy, and unwavering commitment to inspiring the next generation of athletes is helping drive the growth and development of youth sports. Jenny's passion, strong faith, and commitment continues to shape the future of travel and youth sports, motivating young athletes to dream big and believe in themselves.
What an awesome video and an even more awesome individual. Please help me in welcoming to the stage the 2024 Impact Award presented by Coca-Cola United, Miss Jenny Finch.
I'm on top of the world, I'm on top of the world,
Hi.
Waiting on this for a while now, paying my dues to the dirt. I've been waiting to smile, been holding it in for a while, Take you with me if I can, been dreaming of this since a child. I'm on top.
Well, welcome to the stage.
Thank you. What an incredible honor. It's great to be with you.
We are honored to have you in here, and I know Mark wants to say a couple of things, but for those of you, I don't know how you don't know who Jenny is, but she's won an Olympic gold medal, a silver medal, she's an MLB ambassador, she is a mom of 3 awesome kids, and she just does so many different things, as you saw in that video, and we're excited to get to talk to you a little bit today. Mark, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, it's such an honor. I was fortunate to get to know Jenny at Mizuno, where Jenny continues to be an ambassador for Mizuno. And when we went through our process and I reached out to Jenny, the first thing I was like, gosh, I hope she remembers who I am. And was so grateful when I explained to her the Impact Award. And it was funny because she says, oh my gosh, is this like an old person award? I'm like, no, this is not. This is for not only what you've done, but what you're doing. But I think most importantly, who you are and your values as a person. Your humility is beyond description. because the accolades are so phenomenal, but you as a person are so humble, and you're such a great representative for young athletes, boys and girls, and obviously what you've done and what you represent for softball goes beyond measure. But we're so grateful that you're here today, and that we can provide you with the Impact Award as the 2024 recipient. And really thanks to Coca-Cola United and Jeff and his team, and the relationship we have with Coca-Cola United, and the great work that they do broadly, but certainly right here with us at LakePoint, and with this opportunity to provide you with this recognition.
Thank you.
Jenny, I'm excited to have this conversation with you, because there's so many young women and young girls who look up to you and looked at your career as an inspirational guiding point to just some stepping stones for them to want to learn and to want to be able to be just like Jenny. I've heard that before a million times. How did your experience as a youth sports athlete kind of help you mold into not only a professional athlete, but a mom who's navigating that same world as well?
I think that's why we're all here, right? What sports does and the character that it creates. And so I'm just so blessed to have been able to fall in love with the game. I have 2 older brothers who played sports, and there was no other way. I had to compete and hang with them, and I fell in love with softball. And as a young, girl, seeing my mom cheer for the Dodgers and Lakers, I didn't get to see women doing it. I had to look in the, last article in a magazine, or the black and white section of newspapers, and my parents would cut out any article on any female athlete. We couldn't be sport specific, but I was so hungry just to hear about other women who are athletes and living out their dreams and goals, and to see where we are today is such a dream. And I'm so thankful for the life lessons that sport has taught me: teamwork, leadership, discipline, sacrifice, all of those things, failure, lots and lots of failure. And I think that's what people don't see, especially in this highlight reel of social media, is the amount of failure that goes into success. And that's why we are all able to be here today, is because of what we'd endured and how we learned from that and how we moved forward and became better. And that's what excites me most about the conversations that we're here today. Was, yes, we all know there's a ton of issues in youth sports, and kudos to Mark and Coca-Cola and the people here in these chairs trying to make it better and move forward, but just here to problem solve and learn from the past and be better and create more for the future.
We'll continue that conversation in a second, but I'm curious, do your kids try to compete with you? See if you still got it?
Well, I throw batting practice to my daughter's team that I coach.
Yeah.
So now I went from coach pitch to trying to hit their bats to, now I'm having to spin it a little bit. But no, my son the other day was like, Mom, you hit in college? You had 50 home runs? I didn't even know that. I was like, typical, right? But no, we're just mom and dad pretty much around the house. And but yes, they compete with us at anything and everything.
What are some of those biggest life lessons that you learned when you were their age that you're trying to instill in them now?
Ooh, so many. I think you just don't realize. And I'm so thankful for my parents and my dad especially, who was my coach, and just that voice of reality, but also of what is possible, and the belief that he installed in me. And, it was, you got to work hard, you got to put your head down, and don't compare yourself with others. And I think the biggest thing that he would always tell me, that now I tell my kids, and I never in a million years would have dreamt that I would be telling them this, because I couldn't stand to hear it, right? Your parents are saying it over and over, but it was just be the best that you can be. And it's so true, just be the best that you can be. And ultimately, that's all we can do every single day. And now that I'm a mom, same thing. It's like, man, I got to do the best that I can with what I have, and it is what it is. And we'll keep moving forward and keep trying to put our best foot forward.
Your best was being a pioneer in a sport that didn't have many of them at the time, and you really led the way for a lot of women who are doing that now. How did you take those challenges when you were one of the first and really tackle them head on and turn it into the career and the success that you've had?
just trying to use the platform that I've been given for women in sport, for the sport of fast pitch softball, and always bringing it back to the game, to the athletes, to the history of our sport, to the men and women who have supported our sport and provided opportunity and stages to be able to showcase what we do and who we are. And never forget Alex Rodriguez standing in the batter's box and telling me that my curveball looked like a Randy Johnson slider, and so those situations, just every single time trying to use what I have to help make it better for the future. And it's exciting, to see where we are and what's to come. We do have a long ways to go, don't get me wrong, but it's incredible to see where we are.
Just in the way that women's sports has exploded, even in the last couple of years, it is unbelievable the strides that industry has made, where it's continuing to go. We touched on it a little bit today, but from your perspective, how incredible is it to watch women being at the forefront of so many conversations, and now they have sellout games across many different sports, and they are becoming the national story? How is that sustainable, and why are you excited about it?
Oh, I love it, especially, obviously as a female athlete, but as a mother of a daughter. And I walked into the Women's College World Series with my daughter with 12,000 fans in the seats, and she thought this was normal. And to me, it was like, this is what it's all about. My niece just verbaled with Oklahoma, and every single phone call I got during her recruiting trips, I just kept thinking, oh, I'm gonna get emotional, but this is what I dreamed of. And it's not the NIL money, it's not a car, it's not those things. It's, we have a trainer, we have, a nutrition station, we have our own batting cage and hitting facility. And just to see the investment in women and to see how far it's come and where it's going and where the women now are taking it, and it's only the beginning, because we haven't invested in it. And I think about even just the youth sports space, and how we were saying how there's not really the professionalism, or there hasn't been the professionalism in the youth space. And I think the same thing for women in sport. We haven't had that. And now that we have media covering it, and now that the females do have these platforms and people are seeing it. My daughter, we watched college volleyball last night on TV. This is normal, and she doesn't even think a second about it. For me, man, I still have to pinch myself when I turn on and I have the option. I don't have to search, it's there to see women playing sport. And she's dreaming of doing anything and being anything because she can see it. So I can't wait to see all that is to come now that we are finally truly investing in it and just continuing to break the barriers.
As a kid, you had many dreams like every other kid out there. They dream of so many things, and we tell those that are little, dream big and dream as big as you can. Did you ever envision some of the things that you're watching right now for women's sports? Again, you mentioned, long way to go, but it has come a long way, truly.
Absolutely, and I think being an Olympian, obviously you have a different opportunity, but just our hearts broken and we yearn for so much more. There was only 15 women that could play after college softball. And so now, finally, I'm working with Athletes Unlimited and on their advisory board as well, but we're creating a league with real salaries and health care and child care and locker rooms. This is the stuff that is just finally here. This is what we only dreamt of, but now it's slowly becoming a reality.
Where do you see it going?
I don't even, honestly, I'm living out dreams right now, seeing it, witnessing it. I even think of just the youth space of youth softball. We have to start caring for these athletes. And there's no regulation pretty much on the youth softball side, where on the boys baseball side there is, right? Pitch counts, all of those things, but it's non-existent in softball. And so I just think, more for the athletes, more protection, more opportunity, and then if we can just the professional side of it, to see these women now finally having the opportunity, having the assets to be able to go and be professional and be treated professional, and to see how that will elevate what we do have now and the athletes now is really exciting.
You navigated the youth travel softball space when you were a kid. What would be your biggest piece of advice to parents navigating those waters right now with their kids?
Whew, it's not easy. We're trying to figure it out. We have 3 that play everything. We're managing club volleyball, club softball for my 11-year-old. Like, this is insane, but she loves it, and so they have to lead, and we're just kind of following and trying to create a safe space with boundaries, obviously, and then just, I think each of my kids are so unique, and each athlete is so unique, and so you kind of just, and honestly, I just want them, even with my 12U softball team that I coached today, like, my goal is for them to want to play next season, and when they get to high school, I want them to be excited about high school, and so just trying to balance that and give them what they love, give them everything that we can for them to succeed and still love the game. But ultimately, I do think you have to, just put the boundaries up. This is prime real estate, your family, and you have to protect them because there's so much coming at them. And you just got to put your head down, work hard, and walk out your journey because you're the only one. Everybody's just so unique. And that journey looks different for every single athlete.
I know that a lot of the conversations today was burnout. How do you navigate that? Because that is really tricky in a lot of what we do, but I'm sure you felt that a lot. Everybody does at some point. What's your advice to those parents trying to navigate you brought it up just a little bit ago, but what would you say to them in trying to navigate not allowing their kids to be burnt out and coming back for that next year to play on Jenny's team?
Yeah, I think you try to, I don't know, shut off the noise if it's even possible.
Yeah.
Limit the noise. And then ultimately, still make it fun. And that's even, high school coaches, make it fun. There's so many, like we were saying, 11 years old, kids are retiring.
Yeah.
They don't even know what athletic talent they have or what sports are out there. And just, man, I loved hearing just about the multi-sport athletes. I played volleyball and basketball in high school, and I'm so thankful for those sports not only developing me athletically, but just for the mental break of not the year-round intense softball that was my future. And I could just enjoy it with my school friends. And so I think it's just finding your environment, your place, and go out there and just have fun, enjoy it, and surround yourselves with people that enjoy it as well and are pushing you towards those goals and those dreams if that is what you love.
Well, for what it's worth, I don't know how it's not fun to play on your team. You make it seem so fun, and I know it would be. Jeff, I know that the Impact Award is really special to you, but why is it particularly special in this year to give it to someone as incredible as Jenny?
So it's really a big deal. So, at Coca-Cola United, we hang our hat on our core values: quality, integrity, respect, and excellence, right? So to be able to partner with such a wonderful partner in LakePoint Sports, right, to present an achievement award to yet someone who exhibits every one of those qualities, it's quite an honor and a privilege.
Jenny, when you talk about honor and privilege, you have had the honor and privilege to do a lot of different things in your career. You've had the honor and privilege of being a mom 3 times over now, and you're a wife. You do so many different things. Impact Award is one of the many accolades I'm sure you can bring home. I don't even know where you keep all your stuff at this point, but what does getting the Impact Award mean to you?
It's an honor, and I think, here we go again. Just the greatest title is leaving it better than you found it, and that was my mission, was to just create more and better opportunity for the future. And there was no greater honor than traveling the country with Team USA and seeing these little eyes look up to you, and now being able to see how far we've come and the opportunity now that they have and that we have made it better. Yes, like I said, we still have room for growth, but there's so much opportunity out there, and it means the most to me, especially now at this stage, just to know that I've had the opportunity and I hopefully have made that impact. So thank you, Coca-Cola. Thank you, Mark and LakePoint, for the incredible honor.
And one thing I know that you're big on is accessibility when it comes to sports, not just playing sports, but travel sports as well. What needs to happen to be able to make sports more accessible for younger athletes?
I wish I had the answer. I think it's way complex, right? But I would just love to see it more in schools, I think, because every child is going to school. And so why aren't we being able to give them the opportunity to learn about different sports and play different sports? And I think just access and helping out, creating space, diversity and inclusion of everything. And I think that's the biggest thing is inclusion when you can. Extend the hand and create more opportunity. And I've had such an honor working with Major League Baseball in the youth academies. Everything is paid for, it's covered, and to see these girls so hungry, they're literally taking public buses, public transportation to get to the academy to play softball. And there's just such a need for those girls, and every child should have the opportunity to play sport. And I'm not talking competitively, just play sport. You can play sport for the rest of your life. And that's what I think we're all trying to create is just a healthier, safer, better environment. And we know the impact that sports has.
I love that. And last question to you, you talk about impact. Faith has had a large impact on your life. How big of a role did it play, not in just you as an athlete, but later in your life as a coach, mom, all of the things we've described already?
Oh, it's been everything. It's my hope, honestly. It's a scary, dark world, right? But my hope's in Jesus Christ, and I'm so thankful for the platform that He's given me and the opportunity that He's given me. And through the highs and lows, I know that there's purpose in it, and I think you can continue to move forward with hope, knowing in that purpose and for that purpose.
Well, you're certainly walking in that light. You're doing amazing things in the community and beyond, and the future is bright right now, but it's even brighter for what you're paving for little girls. So I thank you for that, and we thank you for being a part of this and being the 2024 Impact Award winner. Jenny, thank you. Round of applause for Jenny Finch.
Yeah, I'm gonna give you this too. I think I was supposed to hand this to you earlier, so I failed, but this is the actual Impact Award, but thank you for being here and everything you've done and continue to do. You're an amazing woman.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Jenny. Thank you so much. You were awesome. You were so great. Thank you.
I think we've got a couple more things. Oh, go ahead.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Jenny,
We've got
before you
a
leave the
special
stage,
video for Jenny.
We do have a special video for you. Go
So
ahead.
why don't you remain on stage here? Yes.
You can sit in my seat.
Jenny, welcome to LakePoint family of awardees. I'm very proud to have been the first and so proud that you are joining me in the banners and being awarded this prestigious award by LakePoint. And, you are a perfect example of someone that has such a great impact in our youth and adults alike. You bring hope, you bring fun, but most importantly, that integrity and that feeling of oneness and unity that really is infectious. And you have been a great ambassador, not only for softball, but for all sports and being a human being. And I continue to admire you from afar. And having Casey as your partner, life partner, I mean, congratulations to you as well. Because it's a family affair, and you guys make an unbelievable couple. I am very proud that we're in the same family here at LakePoint. I'm looking forward to seeing you. Hopefully, we can get together next year and start a whole tradition of coming to welcome our new members. So I'm looking forward to seeing you soon. Congratulations on this special occasion. God bless you and continue the great work in helping carry that banner of humanity through sports.
Yeah, Roberto Clemente Jr., who won the Impact Award last year, was very excited to make that video for you. So I'm glad that you got to watch that.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you. And I think do we, Greg, do we have a couple more things? Yeah, I think now would be the perfect time to bring that up. Just a couple more things for Jenny, but also for Maria.
Oh,
and so this is a special recognition for Maria.
Thank you.
Maria has done an outstanding job for us. She's been a great partner. And we're just Maria, so grateful for everything that you do for LakePoint and that you do for sports. And we wanted to recognize you with this today. And I think there's also Greg, is there a video that we're going to run here as well? Let's cue the video, because you're going to receive something special from LakePoint and a partner of ours. So this is the beautiful Barnsley Resort. Actually, Jen, Casey, and Ace were up there just a few weeks ago. So you're going to have an all-inclusive weekend to enjoy Barnsley Resort.
So nice. Thank you.
And with our friends and partners at Barnsley Resort, David and the team do an exceptional job there. So you'll be able to horseback ride, enjoy fine dining, maybe the spa, or some clay shooting. And I know, Jen, you did some clay shooting there a couple weeks ago. So
I was just grateful it wasn't video of me clay shooting.
There's one more video. No, we don't have that. But Maria, thank you for everything that you do for us.
No, thank you guys.
Thank you.
And thank you to Jenny. Thank you to LakePoint. It's truly been an amazing day. Jenny and I were just saying it's been such a phenomenal day, and I appreciate everyone being here. Appreciate the opportunity to do this every year. This is my third straight. Again, I feel like a seasoned veteran. So just appreciate all the conversations and all of our panelists. It's been such an amazing time. And if you can grab some of our panelists, please talk to them. They have a wealth of knowledge and would love to share. So appreciate you guys.
Awesome. Great, thank you. I think we have one last thing that Josh was bringing up.
Oh, thank you so much.
So one last round of applause for Miss Jenny Finch, our 2024 Impact Award recipient, Maria, and thank you so much.
Thank you guys for being here. The expo is still open. You guys can go over there and check some things out, and please come say hi to us. We'll be over there. Thank you guys. Have a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, the silent auction will be closing in 1 minute. Thank you for attending the 2024 National Youth Sports Summit, and congratulations once again to Jenny Finch, this year's Impact Award recipient presented by Coca-Cola United.